Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Redwood City. Welcome to our first meeting of 2024, and hopefully everyone had a happy new year and a nice holiday season. We're continuing to offer in-person and remote options for our city council meetings. However, due to continued recent disruptions during public comment at open meetings throughout our region and state, we've modified our public comment procedures until further notice. The city welcomes public comment on topics within the city's subject matter jurisdiction, and this can be provided in person during the meeting or by email ahead of the meeting. At this time, we're temporarily suspending public comments by Zoom. We want to ensure that the city can continue to conduct the city's business in a manner that allows all residents to participate. We are currently reevaluating our public comment procedures and will share an update soon. Our public comment procedures for items on the agenda or within the city's subject matter jurisdiction are as follows. Public comment is taken in person during the meeting or in advance via email as outlined on the agenda. In-person speakers must turn in a speaker card to the city clerk at the dais to be recognized to speak. Please be sure to indicate the agenda item number you wish to speak on. In-person speakers will be called in the order in which speaker cards were turned in. Comments that were received by 5:00 p.m. today may be read into the record by the city clerk. All public comment received by 5:00 will be made part of the final meeting record. Both in-person and email comments are subject to the same time limit. Lastly, if we have a high volume of comments this evening, we may decrease the time allotted for each comment or limit the local time for public comment. This is to ensure that the City Council can address agenda items in a timely manner and is allowed under the City Council's guided communications and business. In the event that we have a high number of speakers, if this occurs, feel free to send your full comments to the City Council at publiccomment@redwoodcity.org so that we can see your comments and that they will be part of the meeting records. We also ask that you turn in a speaker card as soon as possible so we're aware of how many plan to speak on an item or during public comment. I'd like now to turn our meeting over to the City Clerk to call the roll.
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Aguirre is absent this evening. Councilmember Aiken.
Present.
Councilmember Howard.
Here.
Councilmember Martinez Ceballos.
Here.
Councilmember Sturkin.
Here.
Vice Mayor Espinosa Garnica.
Here.
And Mayor G.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite Councilmember Martinez Ceballos to lead us in the pledge, please.
Please stand for our pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez Ceballos. We'll now adjourn to closed session, which we estimate will last about 45 minutes. The item is listed on the agenda. We anticipate, like I said, we'll be back around 6:45. But before we move to closed session, I'd like to turn it over to City Clerk for any public comment on the closed session item.
Thank you, Mayor. And I don't have any speaker cards currently, so looking to the audience, one last call for any speakers on the closed session item this evening. And no emailed comments, so seeing none, Mayor. No public comment.
Thank you, Jessica. So council will leave the dais for about 45 minutes. Thank you for bearing your patience with us. We'll be back hopefully by 6:45, if not earlier. So council will adjourn to closed session. We'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you.
we're really proud of the ongoing partnership that we have with the city and with Fair Oaks Community Center, ensuring that our community's most vulnerable are fed, clothed, healthy, and housed. I want to thank you again for your ongoing support of Samaritan House and for working with us to fight poverty and lift lives.
Alec, thank you. And thank the Samaritan House and everyone, the board and all the volunteers for making a difference in Redwood City. I'm going to come down and present this proclamation to you and ask council to join us in the front for a photo. So, Alec.
Thanks.
Our next proclamation this evening is recognizing Martin Luther King Jr. Day. As you know, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. dedicated his life to the principle that we, as a people, have achieved and can continue to achieve nonviolent social change. I'd like to take a minute to read a few excerpts from this proclamation this evening. Whereas Dr. King was a great orator and leader whose eloquent message influenced his country to integrate peacefully and resulted in the passing and signing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And whereas Dr. King received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964 for his constant adherence to the principles of nonviolence in the face of frequent threats. So now, therefore, it be resolved on behalf of the City Council, we do hereby proclaim January 15th, 2024, in Redwood City as Martin Luther King Jr. Day and encourage all residents to recommit themselves to the principle of justice and equality for all. It's my pleasure to welcome Carolyn Hoskins to the podium to accept the proclamation and share some remarks. Carolyn founded the Dominique Hoskins Black History Museum that was located here in downtown Redwood City and will be here for a little bit longer. So Carolyn, welcome. Happy New Year.
Thank you. On behalf of the Dominique Hoskins Black History Museum and Learning Center, I would like to thank you for this honor. The museum started in part because of Dr. King. I remember when Dr. King died and people were saying, why is everyone making such a big deal about another black man dying? Throughout history, we know that all races and nationalities marched and died with Dr. King because of the injustice to African Americans. So today, we honor him because of what he stood for, freedom and justice for all people. So I invite you to come and visit the Dominique Hoskins Black History Museum and Learning Center to help keep his dream alive. We are unstoppable, proud, strong, fearless, and inspiring. The museum will open February 1st through the 29th from 12 noon to 6 p.m. Everyone is welcome. We have a lot of great events planned, so mark your calendar and spread the word about the 22,000 square feet of African American history in Redwood City. So again, we thank you for this honor. And when you come to the museum, which we have sent out 500 letters to different schools, superintendents from San Francisco, Oakland, all over the Bay Area. So we are getting response back wanting to know about parking for bringing buses. So we are here to really bring a lot of activities to Redwood City. And if anyone would like to volunteer, we're always looking for volunteering. But the main goal of the Dominique Hoskins Black History Museum is to educate people about our history. So I am here to tell the story. So again, thank you so much, and I do appreciate the honor.
And Carolyn, thank you. Please. Carolyn, thank you for sharing those words. We look forward to the museum and the words about unstoppable. You certainly are unstoppable. So thank you for being with us. I'm going to present the proclamation. If you join us up front with the council for our photo, that'd be great. Okay, that concludes the celebratory part of our council meeting agenda. We'll go on to item number 6, public comment on the consent calendar, matters of council interest, and items not on the agenda. Before I turn it over to City Clerk to facilitate public comment, I'd like to ask how many speaker cards we received for this section tonight.
We have a total of 17 speaker cards for in-person speakers, Mayor, and we have 13 emailed comments, so totaling 30, which would equate to about an hour public comment.
Okay, let's go ahead and take the hour.
Okay, so we will start with our in-person speakers, and each speaker will be given 2 minutes. There's a timer on the top of the podium. The blinking orange light will indicate a 30-second warning, and then the red light with the beep indicates that your time is up. I'll call 2 speakers at a time. Our first speaker is Esther Adut, and Esther will be followed by Sarah Adut. Whenever you begin speaking, we'll start the timer, Esther.
I urge the council not to calendar any resolution about the war between Hamas and Israel or about Gaza. I feel that it is not the role of a municipal government to adopt for their city as a whole views about foreign affairs or wars in other countries. Such resolutions shatter the sense that we, Americans, are one people, that we are one nation under God, as we all said in the Pledge of Allegiance. By calling for an immediate ceasefire, such a resolution also takes the side of Hamas, an elected government of Gaza, who is rightfully designated as a terrorist organization by the U.S. government. On October 7th, Hamas began the war by violating an existing ceasefire. Hamas brutally killed, burned, maimed, decapitated, raped, and tortured more than 1,200 people, including not just Israelis, but citizens of other countries. Since then, Hamas has continued to violate ceasefire terms by firing rockets at Israeli civilian targets during temporary pauses for hostage exchanges, while Israel did abide by ceasefires. Demanding an immediate ceasefire reprimands Israel for fighting in self-defense to prevent the attacks that Hamas had inflicted on its civilian population, even while Hamas's leaders vow to repeat those events of October 7th again. Redwood City should not become the mouthpiece for Israel haters, for people who hate Jewish people, and for supporters of terrorism. It's important that the City Council not become a tool for spreading hate or for advancing foreign political agendas. It would contradict the exalted, achievable, and decent attributes of our beloved United States.
Thank you, Esther. Our next speaker is Sarah Adut, and Sarah will be followed by Alan Fisher.
Hello. I grew up in San Carlos and now work in Redwood City. We all have the shared goal of peace in our Bay Area communities, and it's easy to conflate a ceasefire with real, lasting peace. But the Jewish community, both locally and around the world, has felt abandoned and isolated since the horrific attacks on October 7th. We've heard friends and colleagues justify the murder and torture of civilians in Israel and heard deafening silence when evidence of rape of innocent Israelis emerged. Our posters of hostages, over 100 of whom are still imprisoned in Gaza, have been removed and erased. Just this afternoon, Hamas sent yet another volley of rockets towards civilian population centers in Israel. Demanding a ceasefire now would send the resounding message that Israel, the only Jewish state in the world, does not have the right to self-preservation. It would send the message that the perpetrators of the largest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust can continue their quest to wipe Israel off the map. It would lend validity to Hamas's oppressive regime. And if the ceasefire demand came from the Redwood City Council, it would tell Peninsula Jews that our local government is less concerned with our safety than it is with creating the illusion of peace in our area. Thank you for your efforts to support lasting, true peace in our community.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alan Fisher, and Alan will be followed by David Ron.
Hello, I'm Alan Fisher, a past president of Congregation Beth Jacob. I want to speak about the safety of our Jewish community. I begin in Germany on November 9th, 1938, when Nazis ransacked Jewish-owned stores and set fires to synagogues all across the country in a night now known as Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. In Berlin the next morning, a 12-year-old boy, Hans Kohn, saw his synagogue in flames as the firefighters idly watched. The synagogue's cantor ran inside in a futile attempt to rescue the scrolls of the Torah. Hans' family fled to Japanese-occupied Shanghai. After the war, Hans moved to California and for decades was the cantor at Beth Jacob. 40 years later, on February 3rd, 1979, Hans again saw his synagogue in flames. This time he was the cantor, running into the burning building. With the help of a Redwood City firefighter, he rescued one Torah. Other firefighters tried to save the building, but the arsonist was too thorough. No one was ever charged with this unsolved hate crime. This echo of Nazi Berlin has become part of the DNA of Beth Jacob. That time was calm compared to now, 45 years later. In 2022, 55% of religiously motivated hate crimes were against Jews, although we're only 2.4% of the population. Jews have been murdered at synagogues in Pennsylvania and California. 4 were held at gunpoint in their synagogue in Texas. Since Hamas attacked in October, hate crimes against Jews have quadrupled compared to last year. Hate is real, and it can kill. Beth Jacob now has 2 armed guards during Sabbath services. We received bomb threats both in December and again last week, as did many synagogues around the Bay and across the nation. These ceasefire resolutions are promoted in cities around the Bay by Arab Resource and Coordination Center, which arranges mass emails and buses crowds to hearings to imply grassroots pressure. The debate amplifies polarization, creating an atmosphere of hate that persists beyond the council session. Thank you for not letting the council be diverted into foreign policy.
Thank you. Our next speaker is David Ron, and David will be followed by Dina Corin.
Hello, my name is David Ron, and I'm a member of Congregation Beth Jacob here in Redwood City. And I want to thank you for keeping any one-sided and divisive resolutions that deal with the Israel-Hamas war from your City Council's agenda. This is the same Redwood City that Alan spoke of that experienced the burning down of our synagogue in February of 1979 by an arsonist, including the burning of 4 of our 5 sacred Torahs. But after the fire, we also remember the help and the goodwill we received from our Redwood City churches and mosques as we rebuilt our synagogue. This is the Redwood City community, one of cooperation and goodwill that we want to live in, not one where anti-Israel outsiders attempt to intimidate us with their hateful speech. These types of resolutions, when presented in cities such as Richmond and Oakland, paved the path for hateful rhetoric, promoted anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, and caused the Jewish members of these communities to feel unsafe once again. When we vote in our city elections, we're voting for representatives to address our local city issues. One-sided resolutions dealing with the Israel-Hamas war have no place in the business of our Redwood City Council. So despite outside and internal pressures, we thank you for keeping such divisive resolutions away from your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dina Corin, and Dina will be followed by Adam Tobe.
Good evening, council members. My name is Dina Corin, and I'm a neighbor from San Carlos. I'm also one of the co-chairs of the Anti-Semitism Committee at Congregation Beth Jacob here in Redwood City, where my family has been members for over 8 years. I'm here tonight to thank you for your work in the regional United Against Hate campaign and to ask that you reinforce that commitment by continuing to keep the Israel-Hamas conflict off your city council agenda. Jewish communities around the country have been working to combat a distressing rise in anti-Semitism over the past year, with a devastating acceleration, over 325% increase since the attack in Israel on October 7th. Our family and friends around the Bay Area have seen Nazi symbols drawn in public schools, hateful graffiti on buildings and sidewalks, and rallies and walkouts where death threats and anti-Jewish hate are spewed with abandon. Here in Redwood City, you and we have committed to fight against that. And I'm so grateful that my family can worship and build community here, knowing that you stand with us against all forms of hate. In many of our neighboring cities, we have seen a big push by some activist organizations to get divisive and oversimplified resolutions about the Israel-Hamas war on city council agendas. They invite horrific anti-Jewish and anti-Muslim comments at the city council meetings, tearing open personal wounds on both sides. I'm grateful that you have said that this is not the forum for such discussions, and certainly not that kind of hate. Thank you so much for your hard work on behalf of those of us who live, work, play, and worship here in Redwood City. I know you will continue to keep this a city that welcomes and values diversity, stands against hate, and works to ensure a safe environment for all.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Adam Tobe, and Adam will be followed by Rabbi Levi Potash.
Thank you. Thank you, City Council members. I'm a resident of San Carlos and a member of the board of Congregation Beth Jacob here in Redwood City. I come here tonight as an American and a citizen to thank you for not agendizing any divisive foreign policy-based resolutions. I speak for myself, but also on behalf of 84 other Redwood City residents and worshipers who aren't speaking here in person tonight. The past several months have been trying for our community at home and for Jews with our 7 million cousins in Israel. Since the horrific attacks on October 7th, Congregation Beth Jacob here in Redwood City has been a support to me, my family, and my community. As you know, we at Beth Jacob faced a bomb threat, but we show up every week, regardless, to pray for healing, for peace, and for the state of Israel, because we are not afraid, and because freedom of religion is a sacrosanct value here in the United States of America. I especially want to thank the Redwood City Police for their continuous and vigorous support in protecting our synagogue and the Redwood City community. They have told us they have our back, and that means the world. Thank you to them. I understand there's pressure from folks in the community and from people not local to here to have Redwood City consider a ceasefire resolution. I think most everyone would like peace, but there is deep disagreement about the best way that should be achieved. I would remind all here that we had a ceasefire on October 6th, which was broken by Hamas. It's my deeply held belief that Israel is defending itself against the horrific genocide by Hamas, as is Israel's right as a sovereign nation. Demand the return of hostages. Demand Hamas to put down the weapons and come out of its terrorist tunnel network. That's what I want in a resolution. But please don't make such a resolution. There's no resolution that can address the complexities of foreign affairs, and it's outside the role of the city council. Keep it out of local politics. Please keep doing a great job of keeping citizens safe for work, to live, to mourn, and to pray. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Rabbi Levi Potash, followed by Corinne Fagenberg.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor G. and honored council members. So my name is Rabbi Levi Potash, as you heard, and with my wife Ella, we moved to Redwood City 14 years ago to open a Chabad chapter, and we've only felt welcomed and loved and understood by all the different groups here in Redwood City, both religious and non-religious. We got the message that in Redwood City, everybody is part of one community. It's a very short time, so I can't make all the points I would like to make. But I would just like to ask of you to please not consider this resolution that is being suggested by others from outside the community. To keep it very simple, I have my own opinions, and I'm sure everybody has their opinions. Personally, I condemn Hamas for the atrocious attacks that they did, and the fact that they're still holding innocent hostages as we speak. But that's my opinion, and there's many opinions here. And I just believe that by bringing international politics to the local level, we will just make this city divided. And that is not how we want to live in California and the United States of America. Let me remind you that the slogan of Redwood City is climate best by government test. I would like to suggest that it's not just a climate of good weather and nice sun that we so cherish here in Redwood City. It's a climate of understanding and tolerance and peace. Please don't ruin it by considering this divisive resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Corinne Fagenberg, who will be followed by Eli Fuchsman.
Hello, my name is Corinne Fagenberg. I was born and raised in Israel, and I'm also an Israel Defense Force veteran. I'll dive right in. I want to ask you respectfully, have you ever heard a missile siren? Have you ever had to run to a shelter? Have you ever had to wake up your babies in the middle of the night, run to a shelter, lock the door, and wait for 10 minutes? Because if not, you might die. If you haven't, you should not promote any personal agenda in disguise of free speech. You should not be using your power to divide your community into pro and against. Your job is to make sure I am safe here, that our kids are safe here. I work with Jewish teens, and in the last 2 months, they have been through hell. Let me describe it to you. A 15-year-old girl was walking down the street, right here in Redwood City. She got harassed by someone walking by, telling her she should die because she's Jewish. She was wearing her Star of David. One teen was told by his classmate that it was a shame that Hitler didn't finish the job and wished Hamas would. And these are just a couple. I was speaking with a Holocaust survivor in October, and I asked, when should we truly be afraid of the Jew haters? And this survivor of Auschwitz said, when it comes from the government. If this resolution makes it to the agenda, then we will know it's time. Our kids are harassed on the streets. These streets, in our town. Our kids are bullied in public schools. Sequoia, Woodside. If you want examples, I'm happy to give them to you. You have the power to change these kids' lives. This is your mission. Make sure they grow up in a safe and united community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Eli Fuchsman, who will be followed by Sophie Burstein.
October 7th is the Kristallnacht of our time. In 1938, the Nazis had the idea to test out how successful their propaganda campaign against the Jewish people was. So, the Nazis unleashed state-sanctioned murderous pogroms on the Jews. It was a day of horror for the Jews, a day known as Kristallnacht. October 7th is the Kristallnacht of our time. Jews are murdered, mutilated, raped, and kidnapped. And what does the world do? Give in to the blatant lies and propaganda that seeks to demonize and destroy Israel. Where is the motion condemning the atrocities that Hamas inflicted on Israel? Where is the motion that Hamas needs to immediately release the hostages, including at least 10 Americans? You know, my friend was speaking to a rabbi in Edinburgh, Scotland, years ago, knowing that there was a lot of blatant Jew hatred there, as in much of Europe. And this friend asked him, when do you know it's time to leave? When do you know when the Jew hatred is so bad it's time to go? And he answered my friend, when it comes from the government. Is that day today? This is the Kristallnacht test. Please show the world that you will not give in to the bullying we see all around us. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sophie Burstein, and Sophie will be followed by Valerie Rutenberg.
Hello, my name is Sophie Burstein, and I am a 10th grader at Woodside High School. Hamas could bring about peace tomorrow if they laid down their weapons. We would witness defenseless Jews being killed simply for being Jewish if Israel were to lay down their guns. The idea of a ceasefire is not new or inventive. It is naive to think that those calling for a ceasefire are ethically superior to Israel or that they know more about this ongoing conflict. Israel has signed countless prior ceasefires in the past, but they have all been ineffective. Why? Because Hamas has consistently violated them by launching rocket attacks on Israel's cities and villages. A ceasefire also means turning a blind eye on the over 100 still hostages held captive in Gaza, many of them innocent girls like me. A ceasefire means allowing Hamas, a terrorist organization, to remain in power and continue to kill Jews. Understand that Israel wants Hamas dead and that Hamas wants Judean Jews dead. Where will you stand? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Valerie Rutenberg, and Valerie will be followed by Ilana Goldhaber-Gordon.
Hi, I'm Valerie Rutenberg. I've lived in Redwood City for all 23 years of my life. It is less than a mile away at North Star Academy that a boy came up to me during lunch in the 7th grade and told me that he hopes Hitler comes and shoots me in the face because I'm Jewish. Unfortunately, this was not the end of my confrontation with Jew hatred. Since the introduction of ceasefire resolutions all over the Bay Area, menorahs have been desecrated, synagogues have received bomb threats, and our streets have been flooded with people chanting for intifada, a violent uprising against Jews. These ceasefire resolutions have not magically convinced Hamas to suddenly obey the multiple ceasefire resolutions Israel has offered, one of them only last week. Israel does not want to harm innocent civilians. Israel is trying to stop a terrorist organization that has vowed to finish Hitler's job, just like that boy at North Star Middle School wanted during my 7th grade. Gaza may not be a local issue, but anti-Semitism is.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ilana Goldhaber-Gordon, who will be followed by Seema Shami.
Hi. Is there a timer up here?
The 3 lights on the podium.
Got it. Okay, thanks. So I serve as one of the rabbis at Congregation Beth Jacob. Gosh, I'm so moved by hearing our students speak. Not Congregation Beth Jacob students, but hearing our Jewish students speak. Also moved to be here on the day that prize recognition was given to Samaritan House and to our Black History Museum. I want to tell you a little bit about our synagogue. In case you don't know, we've made Redwood City a cultural center for Jewish life up and down the peninsula, but not just for Jewish life, for community life. You heard about our late cantor, Hans Kohn. His colleague, Rabbi David Teitelbaum, marched with Dr. King and Selma. Our students make sandwiches for Samaritan House on a regular basis and serve meals in the Life Move shelters. I've more often than most of the times that I'm sitting in this room is to sit side by side by other faith leaders to support affordable housing in Redwood City. We believe deeply in the importance of interfaith connection and in deep roots of community. And I also know from my tradition that there are times when the human spirit seeks out the worst in us, to set walls of division, to define who's in and who's out. And those waves of divisiveness are in our country right now. This is a time when we need to push back on the divisiveness and lean in to our feelings of connection. I want to thank the City Council for keeping divisive foreign policy issues out of this room. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Seema Shami, who will be followed by Jennifer Bolshin.
Hello. Good evening. My name is Seema Shami. I've been living in Redwood City for over 20 years, and I'm a Palestinian American Christian. And I spoke to you a month ago about my aunt and cousins sheltering in the Catholic Church in Gaza. They are still there with no access to electricity, no clean water, food, or medicine. Just in the past month, thousands of innocent civilians have been killed in Gaza, and in front of our eyes, we see a genocide unfold. Being silent makes us complicit to the mass killings and destruction of Gaza. It is very important that as a community and you as a council member of Redwood City to have a voice for a ceasefire. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jennifer Bolshin.
Can she finish a couple? She still had a tiny bit of time, hon? No?
One speaker per speaker
thank
card.
you.
Sorry about
That's
that.
Totally okay.
Jennifer Bolshin, followed by Leslie Vasquez.
Hello, council members. My name is Jennifer Buckchin, and I'm a local, proud Jewish high school student. I'm here to ask you to help stop the lies. Many of the people here might yell out accusations with triggering words, such as genocide and colonialism. They know these are blatant lies. Or, if they don't know these are lies, they might want to study some actual history. Maybe they should learn about Israel from sources that aren't trying to destroy it. But they know that if you say a lie loud enough and often enough, and maybe even make it rhyme, people will stop thinking critically or looking for truth. I find it interesting that the same people who claim that Zionism has no connection to Judaism have no problem defacing Jewish property and antagonizing Jews just for being Jewish. The same people who are celebrating the massacre on October 7th are also claiming that it never really happened, or, and this is really twisted and sick, that Israel did it to its own citizens. Now Hamas is using their own people, including children and women, as human shields. That's an incredible tragedy for the Gazan people. Here's another head shaker. The same groups that support women's rights and are trying to protect Iranian women for covering their heads are backing Hamas and Hamas's brutal raping and dismembering of Jewish women in Israel as legitimate resistance. The hypocrisies are astounding, and the hatred in their lies have contributed to bringing danger and division in our community. I'm here to ask you to help stop the lies and protect students like myself and my friends from being harassed and bullied everywhere, including online, in schools, and on the streets. People like myself no longer feel safe to go outside alone or to go to Jewish places because I fear that I might see something that questions my existence. So I'm here to ask you, please, help stop that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Leslie Vasquez, who will be followed by Rona Gundram.
Okay. Good evening, City Council members. My name is Leslie, and I have been a proud resident of Redwood City for the past 20 years. I am also a high school teacher, and as many of you know, today was our first day back of the semester. I was happy to enter my classes and see all of the beautiful, smiling, excited, and still sleepy faces of my students as they share with me their favorite moments of winter break, like spending time with loved ones, seeing friends, and welcoming the new year with their family. I can't stop thinking about the 10,000 Palestinian children who didn't have that same opportunity. We all see the horror and genocide that is happening in Gaza, and your silence is violence. I want to live in a world where Palestinian children and children everywhere, including Israel, have the same opportunity as my students do. I urge you to please listen to the almost 500 constituents that spoke in the last City Council meeting and place the Palestinian ceasefire resolution on the agenda. Never again means never again for anyone. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rona Gundrum, and Rona will be followed by Itai Beck.
Good evening. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope everybody had a nice holiday season. I'm concerned about the vagueness of the community engagement and the scope of services for the Redwood Life Project, as well as the research subconsultant P2P. They're international corporate and financial advisors, not a marketing research firm that specializes in consumer insights. A detailed marketing research proposal outlining, among other things, goals, objectives, detailed methodology, recruiting specifications, sample sizes, segmentation analysis, needs to be submitted and evaluated by all, including the community. While the outreach is intended to address the concerns and interests of Redwood City property owners and residents, as the owners and residents of Redwood Shores are the ones who are most impacted by the Redwood Life Development Project, focus groups and surveys should comprise a minimum of 50% of participants from the Redwood Shores community, ideally with an emphasis on owners, with the remaining participants from other areas of the city. This should be built into the methodology. As part of the environmental, traffic, and other sensitivity analyses, the impacts of other life science office construction projects along Twin Dolphin, as well as in San Carlos and Belmont, which at my last count was approximately 6.5 million square feet, should be included. There are a number of optional tasks listed which do not seem optional but rather necessary. The associated costs are not included in the $1.5 million fee. These tasks and costs should be included in the scope of work, or at the very least, when deemed necessary, these costs, along with other city-incurred costs, should be borne by Longfellow as well. The time and attention given to this project by staff, commissions, and committees, and council to date and going forward is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next and final in-person speaker is Itai Beck.
Good evening, council members. My name is Itai Beck, and I'm a resident of Redwood City, along with my wife and 3 children. On October 7th, Hamas launched a brutal attack on Israeli citizens in their homes, slaughtered whole families in the most monstrous way possible, raping, beheading babies, burning people alive, cutting off genitals, stabbing children in front of their parents, and the list goes on and on. If that wasn't enough, these monsters kidnapped women, children, parents, and elderly people. 129 people, hostages, are still there undergoing horrific terror. These unprecedented atrocities against Jews have not been seen since the Holocaust. I'm a man of peace, and I truly hope for a peaceful solution one day. I'm devastated by the loss of lives, all lives, but I can assure you that terror is not the path to peace. Since the attack, we have seen a tremendous increase in anti-Semitism everywhere, fueled by disinformation, pretending to represent a freedom fight. Hamas doesn't represent freedom, not for their own people, not for anyone. Chanting in the streets, from the river to the sea, is not about freedom. It's about the destruction of the state of Israel and the Jewish people. The purpose of my talk today is to ask the city to keep working hard, as you have, to maintain a safe place for all. Thank you for not passing and not allowing divisive resolutions for the greater good of all city residents. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our in-person speakers, and we'll now move to emailed public comments. And we'll be reading a total of 12 comments now into the record, as one of them did come in person. So we've got 12 emailed comments, and I just wanted to note that these are comments that were received until 5 o'clock this evening, and we did receive a few emails before the publication of the agenda, and those emails won't be read into the record this evening, but they will be made part of the final meeting record for the January 8th council meeting. And these comments will also be held to the 2-minute time limit. First comment is from Natasha Baylin, and Natasha writes, Our local government is chosen for helping with local needs. Our local taxes stay in the city and are not financing anything outside of it. Please stay committed to resolving our local issues and make life better for Redwood City residents. Please stay away from bringing a divisive agenda for faraway conflict that will breed hate and anti-Semitism and divisiveness for our residents. Thank you for staying committed to the well-being of our local people. Next comment is from Elisa McAvoy. And Elisa writes, I'm in full support of making the 2000 block of Broadway a permanent pedestrian mall. Thank you for your consideration at your January 8th City Council meeting. If anything, we could use more permanent spaces for families and individuals to gather in safely. The downtown area is the perfect place for this type of space. Thank you for all you do. Next comment is from Stefan Meyer, and Stefan writes, I read an article about potential closure of the 2000 block of Broadway in downtown Redwood City. I think that this is a fine idea, and I'm glad it is being considered to make permanent. I wanted to bring up idea of change to the 2600 stretch of Broadway that intersects El Camino. Would it be possible to turn this stretch of Broadway into a one-way street to make it more walkable? This idea comes from the Spanish city of Madrid's concept of superblocks, where you stop, cut through traffic while maintaining access. An idea, make Broadway at 2600 block one way toward the train tracks, but instead of crossing train tracks, cut it off and force it right at California. Force bi-direction traffic to take Perry Street to Broadway. The pros, keeps street access to everything. Creates a pedestrian without road crossing from El Camino all the way to the train station so that it's easy to ride bikes and walk. Cars still go on Broadway, but it's slow traffic, so easier for bikes and people. Makes traffic go on Perry, might make those business more successful as well. Next comment is from Lisa Evans, and Lisa writes, my name is Lisa Evans, and I'm a 17-year resident of Redwood City. Last fall, I wrote to Mayor Jeff G. urging him to join Mayors for Peace. Founded in 1982 by the mayors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Mayors for Peace has 3 goals. Realize a world without nuclear weapons, realize safe and resilient cities, and promote a culture of peace. As of 2023, it has over 8,000 member cities from 166 countries. In the 2023 Bulletin of Atomic Scientists set their doomsday clock to 90 seconds to midnight, the closest to global catastrophe it has ever been, largely because of the war in Ukraine. The U.S. leads the 9 nuclear-armed states in spending on its nuclear weapons program. Its budget for fiscal year 2023 was over $90 billion. That's over $10 million per hour and $172,000 per minute. These same tax dollars would be much better spent on human needs in our local communities, combating climate change, addressing homelessness, and providing quality health care and education for all. We need to shift our priorities away from militarism and toward human needs and a healthy planet. Please join me in urging Mayor G to act on behalf of Redwood City residents by joining Mayors for Peace. Next comment is from Emily Greenwald, and Emily writes, I'm a Redwood City resident, urging you to reject outside attempts to adopt divisive resolutions in the Israel-Hamas war. As anti-Semitism and Islamophobia continue to escalate in the Bay Area, the introduction of one-sided resolutions about the Israel-Hamas war will only further inflame tensions between already traumatized Muslim and Jewish communities and create a forum for hate, which has already been evidenced in nearby cities and in my own experience as a graduate student at Stanford. As the whole country witnessed in Oakland and Richmond, the consideration of these divisive resolutions results in hours of public comment plagued by anti-Semitic jeering and hateful conspiracy theories, as well as general confusion and lack of decorum. In my own experience, I'm a Stanford PhD student, and our Graduate Student Workers Union considered a similar resolution that passed despite over 60 Jewish and Israeli students' attendance at an open meeting, where we attempted to be heard, share our thoughts, and we were met with anti-Semitic jeering, comments, filibustering, and silencing. I'm disheartened and sad to have to face the same situation in my own beloved home in Redwood City, and I'm experiencing marked anxiety, stress, and fear to have to enter into a similar meeting again. These resolutions only and purely show a lack of support for the local Jewish community, whom you are supposed to serve, and fails to accomplish anything related to the outcome of an international war. Such resolutions at the local level have no other function except to promote anti-Semitism, give validity to hatred towards Jews and Israelis at the local level, and feed anti-Israeli sentiment in our own community, which was the function of the Stanford Graduate Workers Union resolution that I dealt with 2 months back. It fed the fires of anti-Semitism, which are already very high at Stanford, and accomplished nothing for Jewish, Israeli, Muslim, or Palestinian students and community members, or for the outcomes of the war. I know the same will happen if such a resolution passes in Redwood City. Next comment is from Chris Civil, and Chris writes, I am a resident of Redwood City and live in the downtown area. I write in support of the proposed resolution to establish a pedestrian mall on the 2000 block of Broadway and Redwood Creek. The current setup and blocked-off area provides a nice location for restaurants and creates a more robust downtown. I recommend the situation remain as it is for the time being. It is a good solution, and I would be disappointed to see it go away. I furthermore write to express from my personal experience the restaurants and businesses in the area do a good job at keeping the area clean and organized. They should be encouraged in some way to ensure that this remains the case. In sum, I support the City Council adopting the resolution to establish a pedestrian mall on the 2000 block of Broadway and Redwood Creek. Next comment is from Eric and Maggie Pearson. We are writing to express our support for the permanent closure of Broadway as outlined in the subject agenda item. We have enjoyed the car-free zone when walking and dining. We believe this permanent closure will help with the continued revitalization of downtown and help support our local businesses. Next comment is from Isabel Marcus, and Isabel writes, First of all, I want to thank you for your efforts in building a safe and inclusive community for all residents. Your commitment to fostering unity, mutual respect, and addressing local issues in a positive and constructive manner is commendable. It is of the utmost importance to continue to prioritize issues that effectively serve our community. As a parent whose children all attend Sequoia High School, I am, however, deeply concerned by the consideration of a so-called ceasefire resolution. While you may face pressure, I urge you to stand firm and reject any such resolutions related to internal affairs beyond the scope of local governance and which exacerbate divisions and foster intolerance within our community. In addition, often these one-sided resolutions about Hamas-Israel fail to acknowledge that it is not an escalation of violence between two people, Palestinian and Israeli, but a terrorist attack from Hamas, a terrorist Islamic organization supported by the rogue state of Iran. In their charter, Hamas's goal is clear: eradicate all Jews, launch a global jihad, and refuse any peace agreement since contrary to the jihad. Hamas terrorists have expressed their intent to relentlessly pursue their goal: eradicate all Jews. On October 7th, Hamas terrorists have deliberately massacred and kidnapped civilians from their home during a national holiday. They have mass raped women, burned alive families, butchered elderly, pregnant women, and babies. This is vicious, atrocious, and savage. Endorsing these acts by supporting divisive resolutions that indirectly endorse or promote harmful ideologies is detrimental to our democracy and to the well-being of our local community. Instead of fueling division and intolerance, we must work together to create a community where everyone feels safe and respected, regardless of their background or beliefs. We, and importantly our children, can only thrive when hate-based ideologies like anti-Semitism and racism have no place in our shared space and local community. Next comment is from Alana Ballin. And Alana writes, For the past several years, I've been very involved in Redwood City with 2 kids in schools, living in a Redwood City address that is just outside the boundary in unincorporated San Mateo County, and through our place of worship, Congregation Beth Jacob. I've come to the council before to advocate for more housing, and today I'm writing to you to advocate for focusing our local government resources locally. Following social media posts and increasingly anti-Semitic and conspiracy theory-driven rhetoric that has come out of ceasefire resolutions in other Bay Area councils, I'm reaching out to you to express my concerns about the implications for Redwood City. I'm worried we will see similar divisive rhetoric here. In other communities, this has led to an uptick in anti-Semitic and Islamophobic actions in schools, against students, and in the community at large. The goal for our local government is to focus on local issues and bring our community together to run the city effectively. My concern is for the safety and respectful dialogue of all of our children and our community here. I urge you not to bring forward resolutions outside of the domain of local government. Next comment is from Natalia Balin. And Natalia writes, please avoid any resolutions about foreign affairs. Our local taxes stay within the city. Our city council was elected based on your local achievements and agenda. As a Redwood City voter and a resident, I do not want to explore your views on foreign policies in the future. Please stay true to the job we elected you to do. Please avoid bringing any division and hate into our beautiful city. If we are not voting to stop Putin's war in Ukraine or voting to call Hamas a terrorist organization, and we are not voting to protect Christians in Nigeria, genocide of Kurds in Turkey, bombing of Syria by Putin and Assad, or violence and massacre in Sudan, or displacement of over 1 million of Afghans by Pakistan, we should not be voting on Israel-Hamas war as well. Please focus on local issues and keep our city safe without hate and anti-Semitism and any kind of division. Next comment is from Irina Worthy, and Irina writes, I'm fully and completely supporting Israel. I need Americans to stop supporting Hamas. A lot of people do support the terrorists and the state of Palestine. Israel should destroy Hamas and that state once and forever, and the USA should support Israel in their mission. I am angry and devastated about the October 7th attack. Support Israel, release the Israeli hostages, including children and elderly. And our final written comment for the evening is from Laura Hochstein, and Laura writes, I live in Redwood City with my 3 kids, 2 of whom are in elementary school in RCSD. I urge the City Council to continue to focus on local government issues and keep international politics out. Thank you. And that concludes public comment, Mayor.
Jessica, thank you very much. I want to thank all the speakers and all the emailers and the people that spoke not only this evening, but at our meeting in December. And as you can tell, there's a lot of emotion and passion across the spectrum. I'm not going to apologize for the people that are spewing hate speech, anti-Semitism, or anything like that. But I can reaffirm that as a council, we are united against hate. We want to be a welcoming city. And the speech like that is not welcome here in Redwood City. We want to have respectful dialogue. We want to acknowledge that there are different opinions, but hate speech is not welcome here in Redwood City. So I want to be very, very clear about that. We all stand united against that. And I do apologize for the recipients of hate speech. It is not deserved at all. And I cannot apologize for the people that offered those to you. But I can do say, all of us here in Redwood City are united against hate. So thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And we will remain focused on our city business, at least for this evening. So thank you very much. We will now go on to our consent agenda, where all items are taken in one motion. Are there any council members that need to recuse themselves or would like to pull an item for discussion? Councilmember Howard.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to remove item 7A just for discussion. Clarification would be a better word.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Howard. Any other council members like to pull an item or recuse themselves? If not, can we take a motion on all items on consent except for item 7A?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Howard, seconded by Vice Mayor Espinoza-Garnica. Electronic vote, please.
Motion passes with 6 votes. Councilmember Aguirre absent.
Thank you, Jessica. Let's deal with item number 7A. Councilmember Howard, why don't you begin that conversation?
Thank you. Item 7A has to do with the agreement for services regarding the Redwood Life Project, and a number of questions were raised under public comment, and I wanted to ask our city manager. I saw her taking notes, so I'm hoping that maybe some of the questions can be answered for the public that they may not have gotten in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I will also invite our community development staff to add to this as well. But at least one of the questions was related to funding for both the consultant services and the proposed potential alternate services. And I did want to be clear, those would be all funded by the applicant. So those would not be at the city's expense. And I think our anticipation is those would likely be a part of the core activities. But I might have missed some of the other questions, and perhaps Jeff Schwab, our community development director, captured those other ones.
Thank you, Melissa. As the city manager has indicated, the optional tasks are actually included in the total contract price, but they are at the discretion of myself if they're needed as we get into the project. We were using that as an option to a contingency, that these were specific tasks that might come up that we might need to do additional environmental analyses based on some of the information we find that we didn't anticipate. With regard to the community engagement, the first task that the consultant has is actually to prepare the community engagement strategy, which we committed to sharing with you as well as part of this process before we actually go out and do that outreach. So we've heard some of the concerns and issues that were addressed, and we believe those can be incorporated into the final plan. Also, it's an iterative process, and as we get into this, we may find that there needs to be changes and adaptations to make sure that we reach all of the community and we hear from all of the different organizations and individuals out there. And then I think finally there was a question as to some of the consultant studies. I mean, the whole point of this is to start early with the environmental sensitivity analyses, to share those with the community, to get their feedback and reactions to those, and then to fine-tune, if necessary, in the development of an additional alternative that gets fully evaluated in the EIR alongside the no project alternative, the project that was originally proposed, and potentially some other variations on that. But the alternative project will also come before the Planning Commission and City Council for final direction before the EIR is prepared.
And I'm guessing there was a vetting process to analyze if Raimi and Associates were the right choice for the pursuing for going through this with you. Because that was mentioned also, that this company may or may not have the qualifications to do it, but I would imagine that would have been addressed.
We thoroughly reviewed that. I think we mentioned in the staff report, Raimi has done a number of large projects in the Bay Area and has an excellent reputation for follow-through and preparation of the documents that we need.
Thank you. And I think it's a good point as far as outreach, to be sure that you have a large percentage being the Redwood Shores residents who would be personally impacted. I would think that would be a given, but I'm glad it was mentioned so that you can highlight that when you talk to the consultants. But thank you very much. Thank you, City Manager. Appreciate the clarification. And having that answered, I would like to move item 7A.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Aiken, did you have a question or
Just a quick question. I wouldn't have pulled it, but now that we're discussing it, I just a clarifying question, Mr. Schwab. Do we know why there was just one submitted? Invitations were sent to like 30, and then we just got one. Any sense of why that is?
We did hear from a few folks that they didn't have the capacity, that they were busy. We also heard from a few that indicated this was a very long-term project and they couldn't commit that timeline. So I think that was part of it. We did encourage a number of smaller firms and larger firms to apply, and I think Raimi did put together an excellent team that we've all felt could do this job, and we've spent several months, as you can know, fine-tuning the proposal and making sure that it had all of the components that was necessary.
Thank you. And is that typical in general on a project this big, or?
I think if we were just doing an environmental impact report, we probably would have had 3 or 4 proposals. And I think because it had all of the different disciplines, community engagement, the precise plan, the environmental documentation, and the economic analysis, it really did require pulling together a team. And that may, in retrospect, maybe a longer review period early on might have allowed other firms to pull that together, because we did hear from a few that were looking to partner, but they couldn't find all of the parts.
Thank you. I was very impressed with the, as you mentioned previously, they've done many projects in the Bay Area, large projects, and certainly appear to be very qualified.
Thank you, Councilmember Aiken. There was a motion by Councilmember Howard. Was there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Sirkin. Any other comments? Or Councilmember Howard? No. Okay. Electronic vote, please.
Motion passes with 6 votes. Councilmember Aguirre absent.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm going to take a moment now to read what the council just approved on consent. We did take 2 motions to do consent. Typically we do 1, but that's okay. It's all part of the process. Item 7A, agreement for services with Raimi and Associates for Precise Plan, California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, community engagement and economic analysis consulting services for the Redwood City Life Project at 800 to 3400 Bridge Parkway. Item 7B, consideration of a resolution of intention to establish a pedestrian mall on the 2000 block of Broadway and on Redwood Creek between Main Street parking lot and Marshall Street Garage, and authorize staff to record the resolution of intention and to provide notice. Acceptance of FY 2022 FEMA Assistance to Firefighters Grant award in the amount of $1,320,578, and award the master purchasing agreement to Motorola Solutions in the amount of $1,446,572. California Health and Safety Code Section 13146.4 Fire Department State Mandated Inspection Compliance Reporting. Item 7E, review and acceptance of development impact fees report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. Item 7F, approved December 18th, 2023 City Council minutes. And 7G, approved claims and checks from January 8th, 2024 to January 22nd, 2024, and the usual and necessary payments through January 22nd, 2024. Next up is our public hearing. Item 8A is to adopt a nexus study and impact fee project list for transportation impact fees, introduce ordinances updating the city's transportation impact fee, water capacity and connection fees, wastewater collection capacity and connection fees, and water and wastewater user and penalty fees and related amendments. Our city manager will introduce the item, and Community Development Director Jeff Schwab and Acting City Engineer James O'Connell will give the staff presentations. City Manager.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So I will be kicking off the presentation this evening, and I really want to start with a great deal of appreciation for staff in multiple departments who've contributed to this report with some terrific outside expertise aiding us. So we have a debt of gratitude to many people this evening for this item. I also want to just set a big picture context for this report. So you know that we are spending a good deal of time over the last couple of years looking at the resources needed to pay for city services and city infrastructure. We've been looking at the revenue that's needed for our general operations, things that are typically funded through our general fund for core services such as libraries and police and fire. Those are funded through our general fund and generally taxes. We've been looking at the revenue that's needed for current and future needs for our utilities and our infrastructure. And that includes contributions both by those who use utilities, our ratepayers, as well as fees that are paid by new development associated with their need for new infrastructure. Those are capacity and impact fees and the main focus this evening. And then we've also been looking at revenue that's needed to fund services that benefit individuals or small groups rather than the community as a whole. And we typically recover those costs through cost recovery fees, and you took steps last fall to update those revenues as well. Each of those forms of revenues has very specific legal requirements that we have to meet. And except for the general fund, there are many restrictions on how those revenues can be used. So, for example, we cannot use water rate revenue to pay for library services or pay for police. Those need to come from more general revenues. We can't require our commercial utility customers to subsidize our residential customers. And we can't charge new development more than their fair share of the costs associated with infrastructure needs. So we're taking many deliberate steps over the course of the year to make sure that as we're updating our fees and our rates, we're meeting our cost recovery goals, that we're charging fairly for our utility needs, both our operating needs and our longer-term capital infrastructure needs. And in some cases, it's been a number of years since we have looked at these fees, and so this has required a great deal of work and effort. All of this work together helps to preserve our general fund to help us pay for our core city services that benefit the entire community. Next slide, please. So the agenda item this evening will focus on our transportation impact fee, our water and sewer capacity fees, and proposed user fees. And at the end of the presentation, and after you've heard from members of the public, we'll ask whether you have questions on all of these fees. I also want to highlight that we'll be returning to you on February 26th with a companion study that will be important for your consideration, a fee burden analysis. That report will be looking at the combined total of all of our city impact fees and capacity fees and some of the larger user fees that will be looked at in different development scenarios in order for us to make some thoughtful comparisons to where our total combined fee burdens compare to other cities that are of similar size in our area. We certainly recognize that we're going through a period of very challenging economic conditions for the development community, and we think that study will be really helpful for us to understand the cumulative impact of city-adopted fees and how they compare to others. So with all of that as background, I'll now turn over all the heavy lifting to our acting city, first our Community Development Director, Jeff Schwab. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Good evening, Mayor G. and members of the council. I wanted to take a moment to introduce the team. The core team is here tonight, our acting city engineer, James O'Connell, our management analyst, Giovanna Erkart, and Malahat Orwang, our transportation planner, who did a lot of the heavy lifting on the project. But this involved many other people, as Melissa has indicated. In November, you saw the sewer master plan. The Public Works Department participated in assisting us with the water master plan. Many of the engineers, the finance department folks did a lot of number crunching for us. And then we have consultants also that have assisted us in this process. Tonight, we have available, when we get to the question period, our consultants from HF&H that did the water and sewer capacity analysis, Hexagon consultants that did the traffic analysis, and economic and planning systems that did the nexus study for the traffic impact fees. And so I'm now going to turn it over. We elected James as our speaker tonight since he is conversant in all technical issues and has been a member of the team throughout. And I'll turn it over to James.
Cool. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Melissa. And good evening, Mayor and Council members. So for tonight's agenda, I will be primarily speaking on the updating of the fees, and that will include some background information on and what's legally required. The best practices surrounding those adopted fees, and then lastly, some next steps and recommendations. So what are development impact fees? They are authorized by the Mitigation Fee Act in the Government Code, and they are one-time charges on new development which are set according to a nexus logic. That logic establishes a reasonable relationship between new development and the impacts of new development and requires a nexus study to be adopted. They can only be used for expanded capacity of a system, and they cannot be used to address existing deficiencies. They are also distinct from in lieu fees that you would most commonly see for things like affordable housing, and ultimately cities set the fees to fit their overall system needs. So what are capacity fees? They're a type of fee based on development's growth and changes in use related to water and sewer. The fee is calculated based on the value of the system minus the fee balances, and then you divide that by the capacity of the system created by the construction of improvements. And that yields a per unit equivalent cost. Since they are set based on the needs of the system, each fee is calculated differently. And so for sewer capacity fees, they are charged based on volume. So that would be when there's a new intensified use from commercial tenants or a new dwelling unit. And then for water capacity, it's charged when there is a new or upsized water meter, also related to a new or expanded commercial use or new dwelling unit. So as mentioned in the previous slide, the capacity fee is calculated based on the value of the capital improvements divided by the capacity of the system. So again, that means that the project growth in population, that means that first you need to determine the growth of population and jobs, and then you determine the associated costs of the new improvements necessary for growth. And that would be items such as water tanks, pump stations, and larger diameter pipes. And those are used to value the impact of the growth. Although there are fluctuations in growth each year, the growth projections correspond to the timeline of the capital improvement program. So we'll start with the transportation impact fee, or TIF. That was last updated in 2012 with and additional rate increases in 2018. And there are various types of projects that were completed under the last TIF, which include the Middlefield Streetscape Improvement Project. That's what's shown on the slide. More recently, the Hopkins Traffic Calming Project, and many more projects like new sidewalk and ADA curb ramps. So the growth projection related to the TIF is based on a 2040 time horizon. And in that time horizon, the average daily trips are expected to increase by 22%, and the average vehicle miles traveled is expected to increase by 25%. With that in mind, there are two categories of new TIF projects related to growth, and those are multimodal projects and also traffic operation and roadway improvement projects. And as you can see on the screen, there are percentages specifically related to growth for each of those categories. So there are some key adjustments to understand from the 2012 study to now, where we have additional data on some of the uses. And those are related to the residential downtown trips, which are significantly less than previously assumed. And that retail is not usually a standalone trip, and therefore impacts are included in other use types. This results in a fee reduction for downtown residential of 38%, and also general retail is reduced by 80%. There are also a number of key requirements that are required for the TIF based on state law. Those include the requirement for a capital improvement plan, for the proposed projects, and also a justification that is required on the new level of service. Also, the calculation of the fee needs to be based on the square footage of the use type. Here you can see the total cost of the categories of projects and the costs associated with growth. Those are the top two rows there. And based on the cost and the total number of new trips associated with growth, the average cost per trip is calculated as $607.41. It's important to note that the city will reevaluate the TIF in the future should it receive grant funding or other funding sources that would reduce the overall transportation costs. In this table, you can see some key selections of the TIF that represent the different categories. For a full list, you should look towards the Nexus study that's included with the staff report. But fees are required for any new development, such as office, commercial, and multifamily residential properties that add square footage. Fees are required also for single-family residential units for building permits that add a unit. But if an addition adds square footage but not a unit, no TIF is paid. ADUs under 750 square feet are not subject to the TIF, and set over 750 would be. Also worth noting is that the city is currently undergoing a fee burden analysis, as Melissa mentioned, and that will be complete in February. That will look more closely at the TIF and all of the fees. So here is a comparison of the existing and proposed TIF to the other nearby cities. It uses the baseline for the single-family residential per unit. It's not the easiest comparison to make to other cities, as not all cities had a TIF that was the staff was able to readily find, and there were a lot of nuances, like the Palo Alto fee, which is the largest fee shown. Used the per trip generated during the peak afternoon hour, and that is more similar to the previous methodology that the city used. So moving on to water and sewer fees, the simplest ones related to those are the user and penalty fees. And these are paid whenever the city is requested or required to do work to assist the development, such as a water tap or meter installation. Or for penalties, whenever an unauthorized use of water occurs, such as using a hydrant without a construction meter. So moving on to the water fee, there are currently two fees associated with water, which are the water capacity charge, and that was adopted in 2007, and the water facilities fee, which was adopted in 1993 and revised in 1996. Some projects that were completed with these fees include the recycled water phases 1, 2A, and 2B, and more recently the California water tank and pump station, which is shown on the slide. As part of this analysis, we also determined that the water capacity charge and water facilities fee should be combined into a single water capacity fee, and that it would best be charged based on the equivalent meter unit. Here's a summary of the water capacity fee based on the meter size, so the equivalent meter size. And something of note is that the single-family residences with a 1 inch or smaller will only be charged at the 5/8 inch meter rate. This is because the meter size of new homes is dictated by the needs of the fire sprinkler system and not necessarily the usage, and the 5/8 more represents the usage expected for a single-family residential. Here's the comparison of existing and proposed water fee compared to other cities. Again, it is based on the single-family residential as the baseline, but also it combines the two previous fees into the one. So there were some assumptions that needed to be made. Also worth noting is that the comparison cities use were based on the ones that are geographically close to the city. And that's true of both the water fee and then the sewer fee that's coming up. Sorry. So moving on to the sewer fee update. The fee was first adopted in 1993, and the current rates were set in 1995. So it's quite old, but there are essentially two types of projects that are funded with the fee revenue, and those include the annual sanitary sewer pipeline replacement projects and the pump station rehabilitation projects. Generally, the way that this fee is calculated will not be changed at all, but again, it is 30 years old, and so the current rate is a bit lower than, it will need to increase a bit to reflect the 30 years that it hasn't been updated. And then one fee that was not looked at is the Silicon Valley Clean Water treatment capacity fee, and that is because it is a pass-through fee that is collected by the city that goes directly to SVCW. Here's a summary of the fee, which determines the equivalent dwelling unit for a single family and then multifamily, and then all of the commercial use is then based on the comparison of the single family equivalent use. Here's the comparison of existing and proposed to other nearby cities. Again, single family is the single family residential is the baseline, but even with the increase since 1995, we are still considered to be the lowest of all of the comparable nearby cities. Again, at the bottom, you can see the Silicon Valley Clean Water fee that was not considered as part of this study. So something to note about the fees is when they are locked in, and those are generally based on a state law for certain projects, and when state law doesn't apply, or doesn't govern, I should say, municipal code dictates when those fees are locked in. So you can see along the top for state law, the SB 330 projects are locked in at application submittal. Vesting maps are at when an application is deemed complete, and then all of the projects would be at building permit or utility connection. The municipal code is very similar, except for the parks fee, which is locked in at the entitlement approval. So there was community and developer outreach that was done, which included a virtual meeting that was two virtual meetings that were held on October 16th and October 17th. We reached out to 1,300 contacts who have done work in the city, including members of the chamber and other economic development contacts, as well as over 200 developers, including affordable housing developers. And these contacts were selected based on the level of interaction with the city and their expected impact from the fees. As you might expect, the most impacted groups were major developers and larger developments. So some of the ordinance features that are coming to City Council tonight include the following items. The water and sewer capacity fees are recommended at 100% of the nexus justified amount. This will avoid potential burden on the reserves and the ratepayers. For transportation impact fee, the recommendation is that they are at 50% of the justified amount for the first 6 months, and then 100% thereafter. This allows time to complete the fee burden analysis and also allows time to make any policy-related adjustment to the fees. Also worth noting that all proposed ordinances include an annual cost escalator, and that is based on the construction costs for impact and capacity fees, and then staffing costs related to user fees. Also, something that needs to be noted is that there is a typo on Exhibit C in the staff report. Exhibit C should show 50% of the justified fee effective on March 22nd, 2024, which is 60 days from the second reading, and 100% on July 22nd, 2024, which is 6 months from the second reading. This is what the staff report says, and the corrected ordinance is available for council on the dais. So the next steps on the fee adoption is illustrated in this graphic. If council takes action this evening, there will be a second reading on January 22nd, and the fees adopted tonight will go into effect 60 days after the second reading on March 22nd, 2024. The fee burden analysis will be presented before the fees become effective. Then that is expected to be in February or early March. And any changes that are adopted on that council meeting would become effective on the March 22nd date. As previously mentioned, projects entitled or vested prior to March 22nd, 2024 will fall under the previous fee schedule, and projects entitled or vested after the March 22nd, 2024 date will fall under the new fees. And then after that, a one-page handout will be created based on the council adoption, and they will include information on the updated fees, the new fees, and the effective dates. So again, one of the next steps is the fee burden analysis. That will be coming at the February or early March meeting. And City Council will be presented with the fee burden analysis that looks at 7 development scenarios, including 4 for residential. That will include the single and multifamily, affordable housing, and bedroom additions. And then for commercial, it will include retail, office, and childcare. Here are the recommendations that are in front of City Council tonight. And again, here are the questions that we have for City Council members. They include whether there are questions on the proposed transportation, water, sewer, and user fees. And with that, we have a large number of staff that are here to answer any questions that the City Council may have.
Very good. James, thank you for volunteering to give the staff presentation this evening. Really appreciate that. So the format for the public hearing is we'll take public comment, then we'll turn it over to the council. So Jessica, public comment.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any speaker cards, so last call to the audience for any in-person comments on this item 8A. And seeing none, I'll move forward with the one emailed comment. The comment is from Henry Sears, and Henry writes, I'm writing a comment on the proposal to significantly increase the city's transportation impact fee, water connection fees, and wastewater connection fees that will be presented to council tonight. While we understand the practical and legal need to increase the water and wastewater connection fees significantly, Tishman Speyer is very concerned with the impact of proposed increase to the transportation impact fee on our proposed 2300 Broadway project and the associated 100 units of affordable housing at 609 Price Avenue. We originally proposed the 2300 Broadway development nearly 4 years ago through the city's Gatekeeper project. Our proposal includes significant affordable housing and open space benefits. We did expect some increases in development impact fees to account for inflation. Yet the proposal to increase the transportation impact fee to $6.38 PSF from the current rate of $1.79 for commercial projects in the downtown Precise Plan area would make it harder to move this project forward in an already very challenging environment for new development projects in the Bay Area. Increasing development impact fees before completing a fee burden analysis is also concerning. If development impact fees are increased to factor in projected job and population growth, but that new development is infeasible, the city will not be able to accommodate the projected job and population growth. Further, as the staff report points out, nearly 60% of the city's general fund is funded through property and sales taxes. Increasing development impact fees not only increases the risk that new developments do not move forward, thus not paying any fees, but that future growth in property and taxes that would be created by new development do not occur either. We ask that a decision on the proposed increase to the transportation impact fee be delayed until the fee burden analysis is completed. Further, we ask that applications that have been under review and are substantially complete are either not subject to the proposed fee increases or have the ability to modify them. And that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Jessica. We'll close the public hearing and we'll bring the conversation to the dais here at council. Who would like to start us off? It looks like Councilmember Howard. Thank you for beginning the conversation.
You're welcome. Okay, well, James, if I'll present the question to you, and then anyone else who would like to add to it, that would be helpful. First of all, thank you for a very thorough report, all of you. This was mind-boggling, learning a great deal about all of these different utilities and systems and everything. I'm just glad that now we're finally reviewing them and hopefully bringing them up to the point where we cover our costs and pay for time, materials, and staff into the future. And I'm so glad it's being done now. And I understand you're considering my question. I think you said we're recommending every 5 years we revisit this. I'd rather do that than every 8 years. It just seems like 5 years would be a reasonable amount of time to see if we need to make adjustments. Is that the recommendation you're making?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. My second question, we looked at the graphs, and I mean, I love when you compare to other cities and show us graphs that really tell the story. I really appreciate that, and I think you did a fine job on that. What I really was surprised was to see smaller cities and comparably sized cities to ours are so, when it came to the, was it the sewer impact fee? That such a, we're at the bottom and everyone else is up at the top. I thought we're not allowed to charge more than we need to cover our costs. So I'm not looking to point a finger at any city, but how can they charge $10,000 when we're only proposing to bring ours up to $3,000 and change, and we were one of the largest cities in the peninsula with a lot of infrastructure to take care of? So can you help explain that to me, or is this going to be like updated every 5 years so we get up to a more manageable number, or do you feel comfortable with the number that you're proposing that you can accomplish what the city needs to accomplish?
Yeah, so with the impact fees, again, they're related to growth and the impacts related to that. You may remember back, I think it was November council meeting, we brought the sewer master plan in front of the city council. That highlighted a lot of deficiencies in the system that need to be fixed. And so when you fix a sewer pipe, a large percentage of that is basically something that the ratepayers have to fix because it's an existing deficiency in the system. When you replace those pipes, you create larger diameter pipes. There's additional capacity that's available. And so only a small portion of those pipes that you're upsizing are being paid for by these impact fees. And so we've thoroughly gone through the numbers to determine, what's related to growth and what's, deficiencies in the system that have to be covered in other ways. And we believe that we've accurately captured that.
So you feel confident at this time that you're going to be able to do the infrastructure repairs you need to do, and with the staff time necessary, that you can cover our costs. And we're still either at the bottom of other cities or not higher than the middle, which I commend you for that. I just want to be sure that we are able to cover our costs.
Yeah, I believe so. Between the rates that were considered previously and then the impact fees that are being considered tonight, they should accurately cover those costs.
And James, I think our city manager wants to
Oh, I'm
offer
sorry,
a
I
couple
didn't
comments.
see. Thank you.
Well, I think we actually might want to ask our consultant to aid this, but what I can also share is just, having worked in other cities' capital needs vary a great deal. And it depends a lot on what is the topography of the city. It depends on what has been the historic investment, what is the age of the utility infrastructure. So you can have two cities be side by side and have very different capital needs, which means over time there's very different costs associated with that. So there's certainly benefit in looking at what other cities pay or are charging for these different fees, because it gives us a sense of comparison, and we know certainly our residents do that when they look at the rates they pay for different services. But underneath the finances, there can be very different actual needs for the infrastructure. But perhaps the consultant, and I'm not sure which one exactly to point to, might be able to aid with that as well.
I think HF and H should be on the line. I think Rick was available. Yeah.
I think he's on mute.
Rick, we're not able to hear you yet, so. Not yet. Yeah.
Testing.
Now we can hear you.
Excellent. My apologies. Well, good evening. I'm Rick Simonson, Senior Vice President with HF&H Consultants. We assisted the city with the water and sewer capacity fees. And I think the question is a fair one. Whenever you're trying to compare yourselves, or when you're increasing rates, it's always a good idea to see what others near you with similar size and infrastructure are charging. And the responses that have been provided, it is very situational. Each jurisdiction has different systems, pump stations, treatment, size pipes, and economies of scale of the number of current connections and those that may come along due to growth. So it is really difficult to compare, but as you pointed out, it's good to be on the low end, but to also let you know that yes, all the costs have been accounted for. This is not a case where we're looking to phase this in over time. This initial increase will get you to the level necessary to provide the necessary funds to upgrade the system. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yes, it was. Thank you, Mr. Simonson. I appreciate it. My other question was the transportation impact fee, the recommendation at 50% for the first 6 months. Could you explain for members of the public why you chose that one and not the others, the other impact fees? This one in particular was chosen, and
excuse me. So the reason that we chose the transportation impact fee for the 50% threshold initially is because the water and sewer rates and the capacity fees that are charged cover the cost of the system. If we don't charge the full amount of nexus for the capacity fees, then the ratepayers could eventually make up the difference in having to fix deficiencies that may be caused by accommodating the new growth. So that's the reason that we chose not to reduce the water and sewer capacity fees. The transportation impact fee is a bigger jump than, as you noted, the sewer rates are still within the lower end of the range. The water rates, while they've gone up, water capacity rates are not as significant as the transportation ones. And the transportation ones are a combination of the fact that we have operational and multimodal needs that come from the Redwood City Moves plan, from the Walk, Bike, Thrive plan that are incorporated into the fee. The 50% threshold initially is just an estimate of what we think is fair until we get the fee burden study before you so that you can make some policy-based decisions.
thank you. And I understand we're getting the fee burden analysis late February, early March. Is that the time we should have a discussion, possibly addressing letters as we just received that developers feel this may be too much of a burden? I don't think we can make a judgment call until we have that fee burden analysis in front of us. Could you comment to that?
I think what you're suggesting is an appropriate course of action. While you might indicate some ideas and things for us to look at, we've got a number of them that we're working on. Consultants are busy gathering information from other cities for the various categories that you asked us to analyze when we did the user fee update. And it really will give you the opportunity to make a more comprehensive decision that looks at not only the water, the sewer, which we're not recommending you change, but the TIF, but also the parks fee, housing and lieu fees and impact fees. You can take a look at the whole picture and understand how we fit in that scheme compared to other cities and where we might need to be and what remedies or policy-based decisions you may choose to implement to, bridge the gap until developers can find financing to make projects a reality.
Thank you very much. Those are my questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Howard, for beginning the conversation. Councilmember Aiken.
Thank you so much. I agree that this is a really comprehensive report and certainly encompasses a great amount of work from our staff, and I really appreciate it. I'm curious also really the fact that we still are at the bottom of our peers in terms of how much we're charging on the sewer and the water, in that it's scientifically analysis is wonderful. And I know part of it is because our public works folks work so hard and so efficiently and work so hard at economies of scale and just work smart. And I think it's something we should all celebrate and be proud of. So, because I see it in our subcommittee meetings. The 30 years, the study not since 1995, can you speak to that a little bit? In 2000, were we thinking, gosh, we should do it? No, let's wait. Did we forget? Is it best practices? How did that come about?
So I think there were a number of factors that influenced not updating the fee. In large part, I think the fee seemed to be adequate for a long period of time. We didn't have as comprehensive a sewer master plan as we do now to analyze. I think the earlier versions only looked at some of the main pipes and not as many pipes. I think that's what the consultants told us last time when we reviewed that. In addition, I think there may have been some policy-based decisions that because growth wasn't occurring, that we didn't really need to raise fees, that we were looking to stimulate some activity in the downtown and other areas. So I think there's a number of factors. The TIF, as an example of a fee that has been updated more recently, was updated in 2012. That is usually, and the reason that I think it occurred in 2012 is the general plan had just been adopted. New growth horizon and projections had been developed, and it was a good time to take a look at what the needs were for the future growth. As you're aware, the Association of Bay Area Governments and other organizations do projections for growth. The housing element was another indication where we were planning for additional housing growth. Sometimes there's just logical times when you do studies. The old law did not specify a time horizon. The new law says at minimum every 8 years, and we are suggesting that 5 years is the appropriate horizon. They recommend between 5 and 8, and we think 5 is an appropriate time. That doesn't mean that we won't come back to you in 3 or 4 if there is some significant change that requires an update.
And when you say old law, you're talking about California statute, yes?
Yes, the AB 602, I believe it is.
And so thank you. That's right. It was 2012 that we did the downtown precise plan, and that's a big demarcation. So that makes sense in terms of the TIF. With this growth and this projection and these studies, it's our best guess isn't quite right because it's a really, really educated projection. But could you speak a little bit to how and if sea level rise and the rise of the groundwater level and some of the things that we're reading about in the news has played into if or how these projected increases in costs and recovering for them?
So I think in November when you heard about the sewer master plan, I think the consultant indicated that they did take into account water infiltration and factoring the soil would be saturated, and that might contribute to additional flows in the system that would need to be accommodated. So that's one way. I think that as we learn more about all of our infrastructure systems and the impacts of these storms that we're seeing, we're going to have better data moving forward. And I think in the sewer master plan study, they also said now we have flow monitors. We're able to calibrate this more regularly. Again, to my point that we may not wait 5 years to update it if we're starting to see trends based on the ability now to collect the data and know what these impacts may be. So I hope that helps a little. I mean, water infrastructure, I guess groundwater, could cause additional pressure on the system, could cause pipes to break and things like that. Those types of impacts would probably be covered more by the ratepayers because they have to fix the existing system versus impact fees.
That's very helpful. Yeah, again, the fact that we're on the lower end of our peers, as my colleague, Ms. Howard, pointed out, I feel very comfortable working with this. No one wants to pay more, or no one wants, no one likes the word fee, but everyone wants nice infrastructure. So I think this is threading the needle nicely to make it fair and reasonable. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ake and Councilmember Martinez-Ceballos.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, gentlemen, for the helpful presentation. Kind of building on my colleagues' thoughts, just in terms of our project priority list, I'm curious, if we wanted to update that in between the 5-year intervals, just kind of curious what document would be that home to the list of everything that we have in town and how much funding has been secured?
So there's a couple of ways that you get to influence when the projects come forward. One is that every year going forward, now that we're adopting these new fees, the law requires we bring the project list before you annually. I think the next item on your agenda is bringing forward the parks list as an example, because that fee was adopted a few years back. So we need to do that. The other way you do it is through your CIP, your capital improvement program, where you set the priorities, and then, we'll evaluate what money we have collected, what money we have available to make improvements, and then you get to prioritize.
Perfect. Great, thank you. That's really helpful. And then the other question I had was around the exemptions of the TIF. Specifically thinking in mind of our affordable housing developers, the folks who are already in the pipeline, that crowd.
So again, that will probably come back, we'll come back to you in late February or early March. And right now you have some policy-based decisions that have been incorporated in the parks fee. For example, lower income units don't pay a park fee, and moderate income units pay 50% of the park fee. So that's a policy decision you made a few years ago. You could, as we lay these all out for you and you understand how they all come together as a complete package, you could make similar decisions for affordable housing based on policy-based direction. One of the, just sort of a preview example, if you will, is the one that we've been talking about is accessory dwelling units. State law already says 750 square feet or less, you don't pay any impact fees. So what we're thinking is, well, how many units are really over 750? It's really not worth the hassle of calculating this for everybody. It's hard enough for homeowners to get through the process of getting an ADU on the ground, where it's a policy-based decision that you could make that says we're going to support accessory dwelling units and not charge a fee for that. The incremental impact of that, of course, is that you're not collecting some money. That means some projects on the list may not get developed in the end, or you'll have to subsidize the impact fee with a grant, or if you had general fund dollars left over, you could do that too, but that's always a tight source.
Perfect, thank you. And kind of on the thinking about the implementation of the TIF, how will this impact the gatekeeper projects that we have in the pipeline right now? I know a few of them are in different points in this process, but just kind of curious about that.
It's a good question. And, we've been debating that as well as to, these projects have been around for quite a while. And, the time has not been, kind to them as it relates to a number of factors, construction costs, inflation, and now impact fees, right? So one of the things that could happen as part of the policy-based decisions is that if the fees, for example, for TIF are set at 50% and the development applications are ready to go and they enter into a development agreement, they could vest or lock in the impact fees at that lower rate. So, what the right window is for that and how long it takes us to get them all through that hurdle, that's one way you could do it. You could also, as a policy-based decision, say, instead of just complete projects, you could say projects that have submitted, before such and such date that have been actively pursuing. You could do something like that too. So that's one way you could do it. The other one that I think we'll be talking to you about is in the old TIF, there was a 25% reduction for projects in the downtown, not residential ones, all the other ones, the non-residential ones. And that may be a policy-based decision that could also affect all the gatekeeper projects and solve some of the problems. So that's something you could consider extending into the future because it is more transit-oriented. It doesn't maybe generate as many trips, that type of thing.
Perfect, thank you. That's incredibly helpful and actually answered my next question about how much leverage we'd have in February and March. But thank you. I appreciate those incentives for, multifamily residential projects downtown. Would love to see us, expand that to the major corridors, the thoroughfares we have around town. And then, for our next conversation, I'll be thinking about, our affordable housing developers and what exemptions or incentives we have for them so that we can keep bringing deeper levels of affordability online for our residents. So I think those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Who'd like to go next? Councilmember Sturkin or Vice Mayor? Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have any questions because I thought the presentation and the reports were really helpful, as well as my council colleagues' comments. So I just want to share that I do agree with the staff's recommendation. It's really a critical infrastructure that we're trying to fund, and as the report and our staff has mentioned over and over again, if not the project developers taking on the responsibility that, or the impacts that they are making themselves, the ratepayers will have to cover that cost, not just end up paying more, but paying for the part of our developers here. And we definitely need our pump stations, we need our sewer replacements. We can't really ignore those critical projects. So I think the approach of doing 50 now for transportation to later decide about what the fee burden will actually be on these projects, to then go forward with a solid impact fee number is a good idea as well. So I just appreciate the time and our consultant here for all the work that they did to create a nexus study for us, and I really do want to move forward with the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Sturkin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff and our consultants, for all of your hard work on this. I did want to begin with some questions. Jeff, if you wouldn't mind just mentioning, when did we increase the transportation impact fees prior to 2012? Like, how much farther back was it, if we know?
Yeah, 2000.
2000, okay. So it's generally been about every 10 years or so. Okay. 2000, okay. And then I want to switch to, I think it's Hexagon, who would be the consultant, to ask a quick question. Noting that the kind of two tiers of impact fees between downtown and not downtown are not proposed to continue in this iteration of our impact fees, could the consultant simply, let's see, oops, excuse me while I find this in my notes. Did you find, what was the rationale behind that? Could you please explain why you decided to, or why you're not proposing to continue the two tiers?
So Gary Black is the consultant that led the work for Hexagon here, and he's on the line now.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening, members of the City Council. Gary Black with Hexagon Transportation Consultants. Our study is showing what the nexus is for the fees that you could charge. Mm-hmm. As a policy matter, it's at the council's discretion to reduce those fees for whatever logical reason really meets the goals of the city. So we did not have a technical basis at this point of reducing the fees for development downtown.
Thank you very much. Could you provide an example? So I understand that it's a council decision to potentially decrease fees, but when you say there was no technical justification for it, what was the technical justification for it prior in the 2012 iteration?
Gary, I think we'll let staff maybe answer that. And then,
yes, thank you.
So as I understand it, in the past, the city allowed developers to do individual traffic studies to document that maybe their traffic generation due to transit proximity and the like would not be as high. I think it was also a policy-based decision in the past for you to incentivize development to occur in the downtown so it could take advantage of that transit accessibility. So I think those are the two, and that's a policy-based decision that the council could again make in the future, and then you get to decide what that rate of reduction is. Keeping in mind, in the back of your mind, though, that when you make these reductions, that if there are impacts that need to be mitigated, or that project list that we've identified may not be fully fulfilled, if you will, unless there's other sources of funds that come in.
Thank you, Jeff. Have any of the current projects that are in different stages of approval within, for example, the gatekeepers, have any of them conducted any type of equivalent study of traffic impacts like the previous projects you mentioned did to justify a reduction in their TIF in 2012?
I think this has snuck up on them, quite frankly. I mean, I think that I think you heard in the letter, while they expected some inflationary cost increases, they didn't anticipate maybe that the city would undertake this update at this time. And so they didn't do those types of studies, nor are they recommended going forward. We really feel that it's best that you make, if you want to make adjustments, that you make them on a policy basis rather than each individual project doing a study trying to make an argument that they're unique in some way. It's easier to implement and administer if there's more of a consistent approach.
That makes sense. Thank you. It does concern me to eliminate that two-tier TIF rate in the downtown. You know, since I think as a city, colleagues, I think we are looking to incentivize development downtown. Like our housing elements identified, you know, many properties downtown or along major thoroughfares, and that's transit oriented. So it does concern me that we would disincentivize effectively development downtown and along transit.
Just to be clear, the current TIF before you does have a 38% reduction for residential in it. And that is authorized under the laws that allowed us to develop the Nexus study and documents before you. So we did it for that, and as I think James indicated, that's actually higher than it was in the past.
But for below market rate, is there still that, even within residential, is there a distinction between below market rate and market rate as was in the previous iteration of TIF fees?
Was there a reduction for? Oh. So the reduction was across the board for housing. Mm-hmm. It didn't specify what type of housing got the reduction. So what you're asking is affordable get a deeper cut, if you will, than just regular multifamily housing. And that hasn't been analyzed and determined to be, you know, something that would come out of the Nexus study. It just looked at housing in general.
Thank you. Sorry to be a stickler on this. It's just, again, looking at the previous TIF fees, there we go. There was, for below market rate, was lower than for market rate. And so, again, doing away with an additional incentives. But you said, so we're increasing to 38% the reduction in TIF fees for residential, specifically within downtown.
That's what's proposed before you tonight. And I was just conversing with Malahat over here, and it says that there may have been in the past some additional policy actions for affordable housing as it related to the TIF as well. But those may have been absorbed in the downtown into that other reduction as well. So they may have been, as with parks, a reduction citywide for lower income units and maybe something for moderate. But generally, I think when you created the downtown reduction, that was the overarching policy.
Mm-hmm. And so where you're leading us is that in combination with other fees, like the total fee burden for residential, say in downtown, is still less.
Yes, correct.
Consistent or similar to what we currently charge, if not better.
I think it's still an increase over what we've charged in the past, just because the project list has increased, and we've incorporated all of our special fees as well. So we have the TIF operational projects and the multimodal projects that are now in the TIF. So the overall cost of the improvements, if you will, has increased. So while the reduction is also greater, it's still likely an increase.
Thank you. Okay. I understand that, some of these fees could be negotiated as part of a development agreement with some of the current projects we have under consideration. So there's that option, as you mentioned earlier, Jeff.
Well, let me clarify that, is that you can't negotiate separate fees under a development agreement. They have to be consistent with your adopted program. Let me try again on explaining how that would potentially work. Is if you leave the fees set at 50% and the developers go through the process and get entitled and their development agreement gets approved while the fees are at 50%, you can vest or extend their ability to pay that reduced rate for the life of their development agreement. But you can't, through a development agreement, say you get to pay a lower fee.
Because it wouldn't be consistent with the policy. Thank you. Okay. Well, I appreciate you answering my questions, and I do very much look forward to the results of the fee study, so we can understand the cumulative impact on current and future developments. I would, be supportive of extending the, how did you put it, Jeff? It was the 25% kind of discount in downtown, kind of across the board for different types of development.
Again, we think that that's best acted upon at your next meeting when we bring back the big picture of where we're at. In the meantime, I don't think anybody's queued up to pay fees in any substantial amount in the next month. So I don't think anybody would be impacted by that delay until February.
I see. Thank you. Okay. Well, again, I appreciate the further context, and looking forward to the results of this study next month.
Thank you, Councilmember Sturkin. Let me start off with thanks like everybody else did. This is a lot of work. I mean, there's a lot of reports here. I think there were over 200 pages of Nexus study documentation, so there's a lot of technical work that went into this. And so my understanding, just for clarification, the Nexus study documents from a technical standpoint the maximum that the city council can adopt. Doesn't mean we have to, but that it sets the threshold. Is that correct? Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
And then what's coming before us is an opportunity to either adopt it at that threshold, but the council can also choose to adopt less than that or incentivize different types of development or locations of development. And that's the policy that this council gets to make next month. I think, I'm doing okay so far?
Yes.
And we haven't gotten to that point. And the struggle we're having, I think all of us, is that we have these Nexus studies before we have the fee burden study, and it would be better off the other way around. So all I can say is that this council and previous council has been very, very clear about our strategic initiatives: transportation, housing, children and youth, and hopefully that will guide us in that next conversation about fee burden with the type of projects and potentially the geographic location of projects, so that we can help those projects move along and not be negatively impacted by the nexus studies. But this sets the maximum we could charge or impose, and the council then gets to choose what we want to do from a policy standpoint once we see that fee burden study end of February. I want to go backwards a little bit. On slide 8, and in the report, there's a conversation and discussion about population and jobs. We didn't make that up here. So can Jeff and James, can you talk about that a little bit and the methodology? We didn't make it. I didn't pick that number. None of us voted on those numbers. Can you talk a little bit about where that came from, the 2040 figure?
So the regional governments do projections for growth. Some of that's based on the housing element numbers, and maybe a little bit of it was influenced by the city's willingness to accommodate a bit more housing in the nearer term. But generally speaking, the job and employment growth is projected for the region by the Association of Bay Area Governments based on a number of factors. And they basically transmit that down to the county and local levels for us to do our planning with, and that's the numbers that you see here, the job growth and the population growth that we expect.
So this came from ABAG, Association of Bay Area Governments?
Generally. And, some of it's also census-based. They do adjustments every 10 years. They do the annual community survey that gives us a snapshot. I think the report indicates we actually had a slight reduction in population during the COVID years. And it's not that big of a drop, for a city this size. Some people moved away because they could do remote work. Cost of living here is expensive, so some people took advantage of that. That dynamic, I think, is beginning to shift again, and people are, being asked to come to work more regularly, and so they can't work from, some other state as they may have during that period. So I think we're expecting to see this turn around in upcoming years, and particularly when the financial situation for financing of projects improves, I think we'll begin to see growth again, and we'll catch up and we'll move on from there. I will say that in all my years, the projections tend to be a bit optimistic for the Bay Area.
They tend to be on the high side. Yes. Thank you. And then if you continue on slide 13, and there's several slides about where we rank in our fees. And, AB 602, the state law that mandates every 5 to 8 year update, that doesn't just apply to Redwood City. That applies to everybody, doesn't it? So everybody's going to be doing nexus studies and updating fees and things like that. So this is not a static document. I mean, it may be appropriate for January 8th, 2024, but everybody has to do 5 to 8 year updates, don't they, on their nexus studies and then make policy decisions?
Yeah, and not all of those cities are up to date, and as they go through that process, you'll likely see all of them will likely go up.
I might just add for clarification that once you adopt a nexus study and have a fee program under the new law, you're now required to do the 8 years. So if we didn't adopt this, then the sewer fee could continue in theory without having to be updated in an 8 year cycle. But that's just a technicality under the law. And I think that as James has indicated, that some of these cities have done them more recently. Some of them have done them under older laws. And so at best, these comparisons are a variety of different kinds of apples.
Very good. And then one of the challenges, I think a lot of the colleagues up here said, when you go to slide 22, hopefully I got these numbers right. Or is it that slide 20? I mean, that one there, yes, or 21, I'm sorry. My challenge here is that, this will be part of the conversation we have in February. I think there's been a couple comments about Gatekeeper. I think Gatekeeper projects were approved in 2019 to enter the Gatekeeper process, if I remember correctly. If we're going to do nexus studies every 5 years, how do we make sure that somebody doesn't get stuck in 2 cycles of updates?
Well, I guess our hope is that maybe the Gatekeeper process won't be the method going forward, that we will have, we have a more recently updated downtown precise plan. We're going to do the central Redwood City plan, that there may be some other processes and mechanisms that guide growth going forward. But if we did use that type of a process, I think we have to look for ways to shorten the cycle so that it doesn't take that long, so that or we have to either that, or we have to acknowledge that, something that's been in the pipeline for that long is somehow given some dispensation.
I think that'd be appropriate as you and the team thinks about this. I mean, 5 years is a long time waiting for an answer. I mean, whether it's no or yes, it's a long time. And to plan on a 10-year cycle of application an applicant can go through 2 cycles of increases. It's just, how do we manage, that dynamic? And every 2 years, this council can change that dynamic too. And so applications shouldn't go through, in 10 years, 5 different councils with 5 different flavors of 5 different advocacies. To be fair to an applicant, they should get to a no or a yes in a more timely manner, in a more predictable manner. So just food for thought. And then on the TIF, I think you've heard there's some policy decisions that the council is interested in making. But one thing is interesting is that we will hear from the 101-84 ad hoc, the dynamic is that if we are successful in grant funding, that lowers or has an impact on the Nexus study to a certain extent, but then it just creates more room for other projects to move up the list. Is that correct?
You again have some policy choices at that point. If we were to receive grants, you could choose to reduce the total project cost, and then that would reduce the fees, basically readopt the fees at a lower rate. Or because you've adopted them at this higher rate, you could just do it on a more policy basis. You could decide to split the grant you could use it all to fund city share, the 70% share of the TIF projects that are the city's responsibility. You could split it with the developers proportionally, or you could add new projects to the list. I think the report notes that we included most of the major Redwood City moves and walk, bike, thrive projects, but there are others that are on the list that weren't included. And sometimes you'll identify something new. I mean, traffic calming comes up every day, right? And so you may decide that program needs additional funding. So you could do a number of things.
Very good, Jeff. And you kind of walked into my last question, is that all projects in the Nexus studies that say within 5 years, hopefully they will be on our CIP. Whether they're funded or not, at least they show aspirational aspects. Number one. Number two, they show how the Nexus studies align with the impact fees, and that gives the council and the public a vision of what we want to do with our CIP.
So Melissa asked for, but we decided not to show it tonight because it's hard to show a map on a screen that you can all read, a map that shows all of the projects, and the GIS and transportation staff actually did it on Friday. We haven't actually field tested it yet, and it's actually sort of coded by, projected years, or groups of years. So we're going to make that available once we've field tested it and proofed it online through the transportation website, and also probably on the impact fee website, so people can get a better feel.
Yeah, it should be part of our CIP, annual CIP budget. Very good. Colleagues, any other questions or comments? All right. It's an item for action. What would the council like to do?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Howard. Electronic vote, please.
The motion passes with 6 votes. Councilmember Aguirre absent.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. James, thank you for volunteering for the staff presentation again, and maybe one of your colleagues can volunteer for the next staff presentation. Very well done. Our next public hearing tonight, is to adopt an updated Parks Impact Fee project list for fiscal year 23-24 in compliance with Government Code Section 66016.5 and 66002. And it looks like Lucas is going to make the presentation. Lucas, take it away.
Good evening, Mayor G, Vice Mayor Espinoza-Garnica, and City Council members. I'm Lucas Wilder, Assistant Director of the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Department. Tonight's public hearing will include policy questions for City Council, requested City Council action, overview of AB 602 and the city's requirement, and park impact fee project list overview, and then time for questions. The policy questions for the City Council tonight are: does the City Council have questions regarding projects included in the capital improvement plan for the Parks Impact Fee Program? And does the City Council have questions regarding the anticipated timeline for projects included in the capital improvement plan for the Parks Impact Fee Program? Tonight's requested City Council action is to adopt a resolution of the City Council adopting an updated Park Impact Fee project list as the capital improvement plan for the Parks Impact Fee Program in compliance with Government Code Section 66016.5 and 66002. I'll provide a brief overview of Assembly Bill 602 and the requirements for local agencies such as the City of Redwood City. The law was enacted on January 1st, 2022, and that established specific guidelines and requirements for development impact fee programs and updates adopted under the Mitigation Fee Act. AB 602 requires the adoption of a nexus study supporting the fee updates, which staff presented and the City Council approved in May of 2022. For fees adopted after January 1st, 2022, AB 602 requires local agencies to prepare a capital improvement plan for how collected fees will be utilized. The city satisfied this requirement by adopting a Parks Impact Fee project list when it updated its park impact fees in 2022. AB 1600 also requires that an impact fee capital improvement plan be updated annually by resolution of the governing body at a noticed public hearing. The city's municipal code also provides the requirement to maintain a Parks Impact Fee project list that complies with AB 602 as the capital improvement plan for the Parks Impact Fee program. The city's park needs assessment was updated in 2019, which influenced both the Nexus study for updating park impact fees as well as the Park Impact Fee project list. In your packet, you will see a proposed fiscal year 2023 to 2024 Park Impact Fee comprehensive list of projects and anticipated cost that includes the items that you see here on the screen. And on the list, you'll find about 30 specific projects plus land acquisition goals for specific neighborhoods for equitable distribution of recreational amenities and general citywide land acquisition goals to increase park acreage to meet the city's goal of 3 acres per 1,000 residents. Some of the projects that the park impact fees have paid for or helped to pay for over the last decade include Magical Bridge Playground, lighting for Mitchell Field at Red Morton Park, the new Veterans Memorial Senior Center scoping and planning, the downtown library playground scoping and planning, Armory at Red Morton Park acquisition, the 1606 Middlefield Road acquisition and development, which is next to Harding de Ninos Park, and then the Main Street Dog Agility Park. Going back to the policy questions, the following public comment, staff suggests the City Council consider these policy questions. And following the City Council deliberation, staff requests that the City Council adopt a resolution of the City Council adopting an updated Park Impact Fee project list as the capital improvement plan for the Parks Impact Fee program in compliance with Government Code Section 66016.5 and 66002. This concludes the staff presentation. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Lucas, thank you very much for joining us this evening and for your presentation. As a public hearing, we'll open up the public hearing and take any public comment, then bring it back to the council. Jessica?
Thank you, Mayor. No speaker cards currently, so last call to the audience for any speakers on this item. Seeing none, I'll move forward with the one emailed public comment. And that comment is from Carol Liu, and Carol writes, I'm a homeowner of Redwood City. I'm in the process of submitting an application for an ADU in my backyard, and I'm surprised the park impact fee is so high if my ADU exceeds 750 square feet. The reason to build an ADU is to beat inflation, to make houses more affordable for family housing. With such a high park impact fee, really hurts me, and residents need affordable housing. In the past, there was a park impact fee and then waive later. I really want the council to consider waiving or reducing the park impact fee based on the current high inflation circumstances. That concludes public comment.
Jessica, thank you very much. We'll bring it to the council. Who'd like to start out the council conversation? Anybody? Do I need to nominate someone? Councilmember Howard, thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't have a lot of questions because a lot of them were answered from the presentation we received earlier. But I'm guessing it's similar that in February, March, we're going to get the fee analysis burden and be able to make a better comprehensive decision on how we, and if we do make any changes, such as the letter that was just read. I know we were talking about ADUs. We'd have to see how that lines up. So did you want to comment to that, Lucas?
Correct. Something that would be addressed with the fee burden study in February and not tonight.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I wouldn't make any decision like that until I had all the information in front of me. I did want to ask, though, that there's this tiny little print we have, which is lovely, but a strain to the eyes, but it's very informative as far as park impact, the project list. And I was curious because you talk, one of the columns, land acquisition and or development as far as how it would get accomplished. So could you elaborate a little bit on land acquisition? Because my understanding is we don't have a lot of available land, nor do we have a lot of funds available to buy available land. But is this something that, like in the neighborhoods, is something that you're hoping with development, the fees would cover something to take a small parcel and make a pocket park or a dog run or something like that? Could you just elaborate on that column, land or development? Bless you.
Yeah, not a problem. So the park impact fee calculations through the Nexus study is based on both the cost to acquire land and develop it. And in some neighborhoods, we have adequate land available, like in the Canyon neighborhood where we recently received donation of land. It just hasn't been developed yet. So we're only looking at one piece of the pie instead of both sides of it there. And so that's why you'll see that we're breaking it down into both the land and then the development side of it. And so we can kind of better categorize it for each of those neighborhoods as we were kind of breaking it out.
Well, I appreciate that you kind of spreadsheeted this because it really helps you see what neighborhoods really do need a little bit more help in getting recreational activities planned for them. And it surprised me that it happens pretty much all over Redwood City. I would say Redwood Shores would be the exception, but pretty much all over Redwood City, so you have quite the challenge ahead of you to try to make it fair and reasonable. I was wondering about the sports complex projects. I love reading about sports complex, but could you elaborate, or is one in our future?
Something that had come up during the 2019 park needs assessment through community outreach with user groups. As you're aware, we have a significant number of sport programs in Redwood City. At any one time, there's 11 teams practicing on one field. Red Morton Park has 3 fields going on, so there's 33 teams at a time out there. So they're heavily impacted and looking for additional space. And so those groups advocated, and we listed those as far as like sport projects. There's nothing identified just yet as an opportunity.
And cross our fingers. My last question, the park land that we kind of saved when we were working with the county and doing our land swaps and everything else, I may have just missed it, but is that parcel listed in this spreadsheet?
We have that as the Bayfront Park. It's the second one down from the top, correct?
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure, but Bayfront Park. So it is, saved for us. It's not going to disappear. That's something that we have actually, until we have funding, we can't do much, but I see where you're going with it. Let's save it so when the time comes, we can do something with it. And our city manager would like to.
I just want to make sure I'm clear, and Lucas can help on this. But my understanding is that we had set aside funds, you had set aside funds for us to study not only the parcel that's adjacent to Granite Rock, but other city-owned property that's along the waterfront. And so that's the study we're nearly commencing this spring. We've been doing some background work in preparation for community engagement to help us, envision and consider what we might put in there. So the council has not made any permanent decisions about what to do with any of the city-owned property. Is that fair, Lucas?
Correct, that's fair.
Thanks.
Well, that's exciting news. Thank you for reminding me. So I think that's it. I appreciated the spreadsheet very much, and I also appreciate the time and effort put into this to make sure that we are fair throughout our city in trying to identify areas where we can improve on our recreation. So thank you very much, and I'll look forward to the fee burden analysis in February, March. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Howard and Councilmember Aiken. Before, I just want a clarification. In the column that says land or development, probably development might not be the best word following the discussion item we just had. I think if I heard you correctly, Lucas, development might be more of a capital project rather than development. Is that correct?
Correct. It's the act of us actually building the park on the land, developing the park.
Because, when I look at the synthetic turf projects and list the schools, we're not developing the schools. It's a capital project to replace the synthetic turf at that school site.
Correct.
So just food for thought. We're not talking about developing a school. We're looking at a capital project. All right. Councilmember Aiken.
I just have a few questions. So three acres per 1,000 people, and that's just sort of best practices?
Yeah, it's a state. The state allows us to adopt either 3 acres per 1,000 residents or 5 acres per 1,000 residents if you were in a very kind of like park wealthy area. Redwood City adopted the 3 acres per 1,000 standard, and we stand at about 2.25 acres per 1,000 right now.
And it's aspirational, so part of the plan is to reach that three acre.
And the park impact fees pay for as we add residents through development. Housing development, things like that, then we would be able to acquire land to offset the increase from that.
Right, and very helpful. So today when I was reading the reports, so Salstaff Park, I never get that right, Salstaff Park, named after Mr. Salstaff, but it's what, 130 acres?
Stillstaff Park's about 42 acres.
Oh, 42 acres. So when I was looking at the different neighborhoods, I didn't see, I would think a neighborhood that has a 42-acre park in it would have a really high number. But all of the neighborhoods near Salstaff Park were still like at, 2 acres or 1.5 acres. What was I missing there?
So the areas that we identified within the list here are the ones that had deficiencies, whereas the Farm Hill neighborhood, which is adjacent to Stillstaff Park, wasn't one we specifically called out as needing additional. Stillstaff Park is a canyon park, so it has limited, park development potential, but there is a playground and sport field.
Okay, so the neighborhood that has Salstaff Park in it wasn't listed because it doesn't have any park deficiencies.
Correct.
Okay, because I was reading the report and I'm like, well, someone must be benefiting from this. Okay, it wasn't in there. Okay, that makes sense. What can you tell me about Lytton Park and Fleischman Park? They're pretty small parks. And they're kind of improved.
Yes, both of the parks received improvements after the Hetch Hetchy Pipeline project went through quite a few years ago. Linden Park was delayed in that process in that it was a full renovation because the entire park sits across the pipeline itself. Fleischman Park, the pipeline bisects the park, and so only portions of it needed to be redone as a part of that project. Both of them smaller parks in comparison to other ones in our system, but not necessarily smaller than, say, Maddox in the Woodside Plaza area, or some of our other like smaller parks like Shannon Park out in Redwood Shores.
What can you tell us about maybe best practices plans for that area to get a little more park space or community space? Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I think in an area like that where it's already built out, it's really the acquisition of land. And so that would become any properties that come up for sale that have the potential for us to whether to be expand existing parks or create new parks in new areas entirely. And so it's just a matter of timing.
And how does that work? Do you sometimes just find out about land that might be available, or like a donate, does that happen from time to time, or?
For sale signs on the street are helpful. We've also had realtors call us in the past and let us know that there was a property available to see if we were interested. And it all depends on timing and how much funding we have within the park impact fees.
Is there ever outreach, like community bulletins, community? Hey, did you know you can donate your mom's house and turn it into a Redwood City park? Or
I don't believe we've engaged in anything like that.
Okay. All right. I thank you for your study, and I'm done.
I think you can talk about Jardín de Niños, where the house right next door made it available to the city for expanding that park, and that was at the property owner initiative, not the city, as we renovated Jardín de Niños, and then that next door property became available to be expanded. So it does happen, but it is about timing, it's about opportunity, and it comes from a lot of different places. So, who would like to go next? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I did have a few questions about the list. I understand it that when you were mentioning the groups that were disadvantaged or have lower amount of space, you didn't mention all of them because the way you measure or have calculated in the past was just using larger sizes, but then calling it one neighborhood. I don't know if I explained that clearly, but.
Part of it's based on our walkability map. And so as you look at the walkability map, and there's clear deficiencies in the city, so we looked at what those specific neighborhoods were. And we used some of the major thoroughfares as kind of the bisectors of some of those. So some of them made sense to group them 1 or 2 or 3 together because they were kind of within a sphere of influence of a park or something like that. And others, it made sense that they stayed on their own because they were kind of an independent entity there.
Okay. It did confuse me a little bit because some were left out, and you mentioned during the presentation that neighborhoods like Palm Park were like left out because they actually met their needs.
The walkability to Red Morton Park is met through that.
Walkability to Redmore Park is met through that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not to say we wouldn't look to develop anything there in the future.
Yeah, because that was kind of my question. It says in the equity impact statement, the ratio is our current ratio is 2.25 per 1,000 resident, which is below the city's adopted service need. What is our adopted?
3 acres, 3 acres per 1,000.
3 acres. And then is that the real goal for us in general? Is that the vision or
That would be the goal.
Okay. And I know that there's coming up then later this year, a study that's more wrapped around equity, right? Trying to look more into 3, what's the word? Indicators, right?
Correct. So one of our Parks and Recreation commission subcommittees is working on the equitable distribution of park amenities in the community. We actually met this morning to discuss kind of additional metrics, kind of looking at Change Lab solutions as a source, but they've identified a few others. And so what we're looking at is kind of identifying the various buckets and then the metrics within those, and then kind of testing those over the next couple months to see what makes sense in Redwood City to make work.
Okay, I think it would help me at least understand what, when we have that study of indicators, that there's maybe more, it's like standard for which neighborhoods are being lumped in with another one when we say about walkability, because I want to be able to identify either by precinct or a tract or whatever the equity priority communities. Because that was where I was trying to think, it's like, well, what's the layout of all these projects? Is it equal equity priority communities areas and split with the rest of the community? Or do they get a priority, the equity priority community in the funds, in the projects that are being listed here? Because that would be my priority. I think the equitable framework would be to use the majority of our funds to focus in those areas because of all the negative health consequences and, lack of recreation space, as well as the other concerns when it comes to our youth when they don't have, or families in general, right? They don't have recreation. In these same spaces, they have higher outcomes for being system impacted, mental health, poor health outcomes, incarceration. So that's my framework, like my lens for what I think the equitable standard ought to be for future projects on this list. So I didn't come prepared with listing like, hey, like more of this project here in this neighborhood or that neighborhood, but that's kind of what I was getting from. It was hard for me to understand how it was laid out for this list.
No problem. And that's what the subcommittee is working on, is those metrics to help identify what amenities are kind of needed and what makes it an equitable distribution throughout the community. And they've been attending Teen Advisory Board and Youth Advisory Board meetings to kind of get some influence from them to help decide what those true metrics should be for us moving forward.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And then on to another concern was just the synthetic turf debate, right? The conversation on that. I've been talking with residents and then our staff too, but as I mentioned with their city manager, I would like maybe something presented to us, like a study that may have been done. There may have been a council connection in the past, but I do just want that to be brought up for a discussion soon about, what is the science behind synthetic turf? I know that we have cork material versus like the tire rubber that people are worried about, but there's still, like you'll hear Sierra Club talk about the plastic itself when it's really hot, emit a toxic fume. But then of course the pros and cons that come with that, whereas like it's better for drought to have, synthetic turf, less maintenance, etc. So just having the opportunity to really weigh those options, because I personally don't really know what we're getting our kids into.
No problem. The city manager kind of requested us provide some information for a future council connection, so we'll start putting that information together for you.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I know it's not like it's happening tomorrow, right? It's a 10-year timing for synthetic turf removal. So I did actually have a question specific to a park in my area, because I've been talking to neighbors recently, and they mentioned how the field at Taft is still closed off when they were able to visit it after school hours pre-pandemic. So I was wondering, is that because of staff time and not having the funding for it to operate, or any other reason?
Many of the school campuses are still closed after school hours, so after that 3 o'clock time that you would traditionally expect them to be open, because the school still has a number of programs operating on them. And so most of the school sites remain closed until that 6:30 time frame, when most of the after-school programs or other activities on the campus end for the day. Something that we've seen at a couple of the campuses where the principals have kept the campuses closed kind of past what has been a traditional time, but our joint use agreement kind of dictates it's after their operations are done for the day.
Okay, so is it true? Is the staff aware if the operations of the park and the closures are different from pre-pandemic hours?
I think during all of the school remodeling projects, there's been a change in fencing and securing of the properties that you've seen. And so whereas they were a little more porous and accessible before, like maybe it was just a chain that was across a large opening, now they have, tall fences and gates, and it's a lot harder to access any of the properties if you were just trying to like come in and play for a little bit after school or something.
Oh, so the security measures are kind of pushing people away during the time that it's operable or like allowed to be on the field?
Limiting access until the school is done with the site for the day, I think is.
Oh, okay. So you're saying that the new security measures are in place when there's still programming on
Correct.
school? Oh, okay. So no real changes pre-pandemic to now, to the hours, other than perhaps the way it looks, like security.
The way it looks, yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I appreciate you answering my questions. Yeah, that's really it. That's really the framework I'm hoping to, share and that we can have as a council with projects in the future. But yeah, that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Sturkin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lucas, for your presentation and all the hard work compiling this list. I just wanted to firstly express my support for approving the list, adopting the updated Parks Impact Fee project list. And then I just wanted to, on line of questioning about indicators and metrics that the Parks and Rec is considering right now, that guides the parkland ratio in this project list. So, I understand that looking at acreage per 1,000 residents is, kind of an equal metric, right? Across the city, across neighborhoods and everything. But I wanted to ask if it includes kind of some of the following considerations. Looking at our housing element, for instance, we look at overcrowding, we look at, the density of different types of housing stock and whatnot. That metric of acreage per 1,000 residents, does that take into consideration those things?
So the ratio of the 3 acres per thousand is call it a generic metric. What we're doing at a staff level and what you're seeing on this capital improvement project list is looking at it in those kind of like neighborhood by neighborhood or groups of neighborhoods that are within the confines of a major thoroughfare to identify, based on population density, so the number of residents within those census tracts and blocks, kind of what makes the most sense there. So you'll see, as we identify the Friendly Acres neighborhood, you've got Redwood Village, which is, a small section over there also adjacent to Hoover Park. And so we're including, we're starting to look at, what are that kind of sphere of influence of where people can move between, and then analyzing the acres per thousand for that population. If there's 4,500 residents in there instead of 3,000, well, then they should probably be at, a little bit more. So.
Thank you. It just seems as if that may not fully capture the full picture. Maybe it's impossible to capture the full picture, right? But just looking at two neighborhoods, for example, in comparison. So, my neighborhood, Centennial, it's 0.44 acres per 1,000 versus the Eagle Hill, Edgewood, Mount Carmel kind of grouping that was created, right? It was 0.266. So it appears as if the acreage is less, right? Or that's what the facts tell us, right? But one thing to consider is, do we consider lot size and privatize open space versus public open space, and how maybe residents in those kind of groupings of neighborhoods really, in actuality, have more access to open space. It just happens to be privatized versus, like in my neighborhood, it's the opposite.
Can you clarify privatized open space?
Yes, like someone's backyard.
Sorry. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, we don't include that, like the actual open space on somebody's private lot within the calculations. We're merely doing it on the acres per thousand ratio, and then the number kind of residents that we're clumping together in a sphere of influence, or something like that. Whereas, as we've identified gaps within the map where there's not something, and say it's between 3 neighborhoods, if we put something in the middle, we could serve a couple of different neighborhoods by putting a park in that location. But it's also what size park would that need to be in order to best serve? We couldn't put a 1,000 square foot park in there. It might need to be, half an acre or something like that in order to kind of better serve a neighborhood.
Thank you. That makes sense. I just would encourage you to kind of consider privately held open space as well in that equation, to make sure that, you know, that figure, what we consider equitable, is truly equitable across all neighborhoods in Redwood City. You know, just considering, like, you know, where I live, for instance, in Centennial, it's a 10-unit complex. We don't have a backyard, right? It's a carport, it's a driveway. And you know, there are residents in my neighborhood where, you know, there's 6 people in one, you know, a one-room apartment. So that I understand is factored into the density equation, you know, the per 1,000 residents, but not the space that is on the property, on the resident's property. And so if there's any kind of way to capture that, I would really appreciate it, just to make sure that we truly are, you know, equitably serving all residents, regardless of how much property they own, or if they rent, or if they, or how large their property is. Just hoping that, you know, in the future, that this project list will reflect that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Strickland. Councilmember Martinez-Sabas, anything to add?
Thank you for the great presentation, Lucas. Aside from the questions my colleague members asked, I think I you know, generally support the, you know, I was also a little confused about the my own neighborhood, Palm Park, just not being listed there, right? I think the walkability explains it really well. And I just pulled up Google Maps, and of course, you know, I thought of Red Morton, but thinking about Stambaugh Hill or the other neighborhood, I was kind of curious about, of course, there's parks. And, you know, I would just say for future meetings, I would be curious, you know, walkability was helpful as a metric, maybe just adding a map just to show what those boundaries are, because, you know, finding out after the fact was clarifying, but it was hard to grasp the first time around. Aside from that, you know, I just appreciate the equity work you all are doing to bring more programming and more events to the neighborhood parks too. I think, you know, aside from expanding the green space that we have in the residential neighborhoods, bringing the programming to people is, of course, really important in just building that community. So I thank you for that work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other comments? Councilmember Howard.
Well, in light of what my colleague just said, I just wanted to recognize the fact that my thanks to the Parks, Recs, and Community Services Department in general, because, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, that Redwood City has more parks, playgrounds, and updated open space and equipment than any other city on the peninsula, and that doesn't come easily. You work to see where you can always make a difference by activating areas. You're always looking around the city, seeing how you can activate and create more spaces for the population that we have in this community. So much so that other cities love to come to Redwood City and use our parks and playgrounds, and I think it's wonderful. So Magical Bridge would be a perfect example. So I just wanted to commend you for doing what you do. It's a challenge, but I think we do it better than most, and so thank you very much.
Thank you to the council for that, too, for approving those projects along the way, because they've brought great assets to the residents.
Councilmember Sturkin.
Thank you, Mayor, for indulging me here. And I in no way, you know, intend to downplay the hard work that you're doing, Lucas, and the rest of the department. I just wanted to make sure that we factor in that, you know, some people do have the privilege of being able to enjoy open space in their own yard versus in a public space, right? And so you're helping remedy that by ensuring that people can walk to their local park, wherever that may be, and investing in that space. And I've also had a lot of coffee, so that's why I was kind of running with it. So thank you for listening. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Sturkin, no more coffee for you. No, I'm kidding. Lucas, thank you and the team, as well as our commission, for all the hard work. This is not one person or even one department. It's a community that's doing this. So please convey our gratitude to everyone involved. Just a clarifying question. Part of the catchment area for our parks, particularly in the Vice Mayor's district, potentially Friendly Acres, includes I saw a note about unincorporated. So is that, can you talk about, Redwood City incorporated versus Redwood City unincorporated?
So the unincorporated area predominantly takes up North Fair Oaks area. One of the things that we're looking at is we're reviewing kind of the neighborhoods on the periphery of the city. Is what's that porous nature of the border to like the adjoining city. So Edgewood Road has very limited cross points into San Carlos. Friendly Acres, one side of Bay Road is unincorporated county land. The other side of Bay Road is all Redwood City. So at any point you could cross over. So we kind of have that sphere of influence of our parks they consider to be their parks. They're all one park at that point. The county doesn't have a significant, park in that section of town. It's not until you get to Flood Park, past Marsh Road, that you've got significant acreage that would really serve a large population of about 16,000 people that live in that area. And so, that means that, Andrew Spinas Park and Hoover Park, which are the two parks kind of in the Friendly Acres neighborhood there, are then, kind of additionally utilized by more people from outside of the proper city limits.
Lucas, I appreciate that, because what that means to me also is there's another potential partner. If our county residents are using our parks, then the county needs to be looked upon as a partner to help create new parks to get to that 3 acres per 1,000. And so I want to make sure that message is delivered, that we should be having appropriate conversations with the county to make sure we collectively get to that 3 per 1,000, not just it's Redwood City's responsibility, because nobody really cares about the city limit. If there's a park there, they want to go use the park, and so the county should step up and be a partner. So thank you for that, and again, thank you for all the hard work. So council, this items for action. What would the council like to do?
I move to approve.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Sturkin, second by Councilmember Martinez-Ceballos. Electronic vote, please.
Motion passes with 6 votes, with Councilmember Aguirre absent.
Thank you, Jessica. Lucas, thank you very much. No staff reports tonight. Item 10, matters of council interest. Anybody reporting on meetings or conferences attended since our last meeting? Not seeing any. Our next item is City Council Committee reports. Ad Hoc Committee 10184, and Councilmember Martinez-Ceballos will give that update.
Thank you, Mayor. The SR 84 US 101 Interchange Ad Hoc Committee met Friday, January 5th, with Council members Howard and Martinez-Ceballos in attendance. Staff and consultants reported on the project status, including upcoming right-of-way and fundraising efforts. And the city and Caltrans are working closely on funding and project management. In February, the city will be applying for federal Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, or RAISE funding. The next meeting of the ad hoc committee will be held on February 23rd, 2024.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez-Ceballos. Our city manager update.
Thank you, Mayor G. So 3 updates tonight. First, a cool new event that I really wish was available when my daughter was young, which is a swap event at the library for gently used items for kids. So on January 18th, people can bring gently used toys, clothes, shoes, and more for kids age 0 to 12 and find an opportunity to take something new to you home. So great opportunity to reduce perhaps the clutter in your home and bring something that can be used for somebody else. Additionally, wanted to share that we have an upcoming household hazardous waste drop-off event that will be on Saturday, January 27th. You do need to register in advance and can do that at the county website at smchealth.org/HHW-appointment. And the last one, to let you and community know, some residents in the city are going to be on the front lines of receiving a biannual survey that we ask residents to provide us information about their satisfaction with city services. So there's 2 parts to the approach this year. One will be a randomly selected sample of people who receive a postcard and are invited to send in their feedback about services, and then we'll open it to anybody in the community who would like to provide feedback. So for that second phase, it will be January 17th through 31st. So we'll send lots of information through our social media for anybody who would like to share information. But if you happen to be one with the golden ticket, we'd love for you to go ahead and respond to the survey, because being randomly selected does help us make sure we're getting a representative sample. Thank you.
Thank you. I love the swap meet. Is that what it was called, for gently used items for 0 to 12? Yep. Perfect. Thank you. With that, I think that concludes the business of the council for this evening. Meeting adjourned. Everyone be safe, be well. We'll see you at our next meeting on January 22nd. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.